Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I'm Andy Signore, and I got to start this show right out the gate by explaining that this is not the type of topic we typically do here. As you'll see behind me, I'm in a t-shirt. I'm in front of a bunch of toys and nerd stuff. I'm a movie junkie. We talk about pop culture here all the time. However, I've been watching the news today, and I just can't help but react. And there's a lot of horrific stuff that's happening, and we are a news channel, and I want to do my best to try and cover it. So I have attempted to bring in some experts to help educate me to sort of understand what's going on. Why is this going on? What can we be aware of? How can we help everybody out there that's going through this? What can we do? And I wanted to have the conversation with you guys today because as we talk about news, this topic is unavoidable. In case you missed it, last night, Russia did invade the Ukraine. And currently right now, there's things happening all throughout the day, but Chernobyl nuclear power plant has now been captured by forces. It's a lot to digest. I know a lot of you are scared. Let's try and take a deep breath. Let's try and get through this. I'm very happy because I got a friend of mine here on the show. I'm so happy for you guys to meet him. Ilya is here. What's up, Ilya? How are you doing, man?
Yeah, how's it going?
So happy. Now, for those that don't know, Ilya and I go way back. Ilya was part of our show Man at Arms over on the Omni channel. He's a blacksmith, and you are Moscow born. So you have some obviously Russian experience. You're also a global affairs. You've been studying it. You know a lot about the conflict that's going on there, and you're going to help us break it down.
Yes, well, I can give you a brief history that will be helpful in understanding of what's going on.
So excited, happy to have you, and guys, check out, man. What's that? That Works is now the channel that they are on. You're still over there with Matt doing some amazing stuff on you guys on your own, and I'm so proud of you guys and what you're doing. I'm going to plug it a lot, even though I know this is a lot of serious stuff, but show him some love because what they're doing is amazing over there. But I'm excited to talk to Ilya about this type of topic. This is important to him, and I know you have some serious reactions. Actually, my other buddy is jumping in as we speak. We got a lot to go through, guys. I know this is going to be a tough conversation, and there's a lot to sort of explain and try to understand. I just want to be fully upfront right out the gate. I am completely ignorant to a lot of this. I'm going to be asking stupid questions. I am not as informed, so please don't look at me as some expert here trying to explain what's going on here. I tried to bring in some people who could help educate me and hopefully, in turn, you to learn more about what's going on so I can ask the dumb questions and we can try and get some sort of explanation and understand what's happening. Very happy for Ilya here. James, are you there? I see the audio, but I don't see the video. Are you there, James?
I am.
There we go.
I am.
Okay, awesome. Happy to also happy to have my friend James Judge. James is a veteran. Served in Afghanistan. He's also a PR expert of his own. He started his own PR firm. He was instrumental in helping me in my return to claim and coming back. He lives here in Florida with me. I'm so grateful. Very good friend. And you have actually been doing something amazing. Last night you were streaming. That's where all this sort of started. You've been helping Project Dynamo, which is an organization that you have some friends, some fellow veterans in, who are out there trying to save Americans. You guys were doing it in Afghanistan, but now they are currently mid-mission trying to save some Americans right now as we are streaming. We were trying to get them on, but they're deep in the Ukraine trying to get out of there. But I want to talk about that as well because this is an amazing organization I want people to know about, and I want people to meet you. But welcome, James. You also are obviously paying close attention to this.
Absolutely, yes. Of course, I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning covering this, talking about it. Talking with Brian. I mean, we yesterday evening, I think around 6, we started getting chatter and information from people on the ground that it looked like Russia was going to hit Kiev, and that was something that, I mean, everybody was still kind of like, why is Putin really going to do this? But he decided to do it, and we had heard that it was going to happen. And later that night, Brian Stern, who is the co-founder of Project Dynamo, was in a group chat with us and is like, explosions felt in Kiev, less than a kilometer away. We need to roll. And that's when months of planning. I mean, they had some boots on the ground in December, inserted more people into the ground in January to begin planning. This is the advantage to this rather than Afghanistan was that there was some time to prepare, at least on Project Dynamo's end. This is a volunteer-led rescue effort. It's not affiliated with the American government at all, even though that pretty much everybody involved or many of the people involved in the operational part of it are either veterans, reservists in the U.S. military. But there was some time to gather a human network of people that could assist, and then also getting the infrastructure in place. You're talking about buses, you're talking about vehicles, you're talking about safe houses for people to stay at. and they were able to plan a lot of that to help with this. The minute the explosion started, Russia, there was reports that Russia was moving armor, tanks across the border from Belarus. It was like, we need to go. We need to get Oscar Mike, or military phonetic alphabet for on the move. And that's when they started telling Americans, hey, meet at the rendezvous point. They met, and there's about 24 Americans right now that are headed to another country near Ukraine. They left about, 1 o'clock in the morning or midnight. Actually 1 o'clock in the morning, I think, when we started our live feed. And you have to forgive me, I didn't get much sleep, but they started moving, and they're still driving. I just talked to Brian a few minutes ago. They're hopeful that they can do it tonight, but they may have to hold tight overnight and then try to reach the American embassy in a nearby country tomorrow. So
yeah, it's incredible.
You were developing story.
You were streaming last night. He was in the car. They had the van, and if he's available, we were trying to get him on, but I know it's harder where he's at. But if any point, feel free to share the invite. If we can get some insight from him on the ground there, what's happening, or he can explain more, we will do that. But first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing here, and I'm glad to hear that you're partnering and helping with them, because what an amazing organization to help, and amazing that they were able to sort of move so quickly. And I think that's where I just want to start as we have this conversation, and sort of first of all, I guess let's step back. There's breaking news, obviously, right now that's happening, which is now they've taken over the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Been captured by Russian forces. There's so much stuff we can go through about what's happening. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been paying attention.
Russia has declared war on Ukraine. As soon as the declaration... Oh, fuck! That's a missile! That's a missile! That's a fucking missile!
I mean, people are reacting all over social media as we're seeing this awful footage and stuff coming in, images, photos. It's just really hard to know as so many people are trying to get out of here. I mean, there were slight warnings. There was a lot of people suspecting that this might happen. However, now it's been clear. Get out. It's happening. He's now, the residents of Kiev are fleeing. Missile air attacks have been reported across the country. The UN held this emergency meeting last night, and here was Putin's speech, which I just want to show a little bit of.
Efforts.
I consider it necessary to take a long overdue decision to immediately recognize the independence and sovereignty of Donetsk's People's Republic and Luhansk's People's Republic. I'm asking the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation to support this decision and then rectify treaties of friendship and mutual assistance with both republics. We demand for those who took over and retained the power in Kyiv to immediately stop combat activity. Otherwise, the responsibility for continuing the bloodshed will lay on the shoulders of the Ukrainian regime.
And Andy, since this video, this is an old video. A lot has happened since then. That was when he was just talking about two areas that, like Crimea, were, and maybe our friend here can talk a little more about that, but that Putin has claims, I guess, there's some dispute in regional territories. But at the end of the day, Russia invaded a sovereign country last night and did it. It was an unprovoked action. It was crazy. And then Putin's threat to the world that if anybody gets involved, that they're going to see consequences, the likes they've never seen before, is probably the most egregious, outrageous threat we've ever seen in my lifetime. But it's unreal. It's crazy. This guy is evil, and you're witnessing evil take place in history right now. It's a sad thing to see.
Yeah, I was looking for that clip. I thought I was going to be in there next. But yeah, I want to go to you, because I guess that's the summary of what's happening. And thank you for summarizing that up so quickly, James. But yeah, it's terrifying what's happening. And I want to go to you, Ilya, because you're from Moscow. You were born and raised in Moscow. You don't live there now. But this is now Putin and Russia, your country, declaring war. What is your reaction to this? I guess I want to go to first.
Well, before I give my reaction, I'd like to set up a necessary set of backgrounds for your viewers to understand. After the collapse or rebranding of the Soviet Union in 1991, in 1994, the sovereignty of Ukraine was was formalized in the Budapest Protocols, or the Budapest Accords, 1994. According to that treaty, which Russia signed and Ukraine signed, as well as Uzbekistan and a couple other republics, Ukraine, that at the time had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, would surrender its nuclear warheads to the Russian Federation. Putin comes to power in early 2000s. The background of Putin, he is a KGB intelligence agent. He knows how to conduct misinformation warfare. That was his job. So keep that in mind. Also consider Putin's necessity for theatrical flair that is characterized by absolute brutality and cold-heartedness. Let's look at an earlier 2008 situation where Russia invaded Georgia. It was during the Olympics. Putin again uses the world stage of the Olympics to, in 2014, one day after the Olympics, to take over Crimea. And the way he does take over Crimea, the context of Donetsk, Donbass, and Crimea is that it's primarily Russian-speaking and ethnically Russian territory. So it is up to debate whether the people there want to be part of Russia or want to be part of Ukraine. But it's not up to debate that those things were part of Ukraine legally. Putin stages a fake uprising, and one day after the 2014 Olympics, little green men, as they were called, that means Russian military without any insignias, start taking over strategic points.
Is that Wagner? Are you talking about Wagner, their private military company?
No. Well, Wagner as well as other. I don't want to attribute everything to Wagner, because although it's a private, non-private security organization, there are more players involved in the region.
Got it.
But you're familiar with Wagner.
Yes. Yeah, they're on the ground. We had our guys saw them there. They saw GRU agents in Kiev yesterday. I mean, that was some of why we were seeing things kind of unfold and knowing that there was something getting ready to happen. Wagner has a lot of people in Ukraine right now. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so the reason why after 2014, after all those territories were by Russia declared to be Russia, and he needed, the reason why they were invaded is for internal political tensions, and Russians always thought Crimea was Russian. But recently, President Zelensky started talking about the fact that Russia broke the Budapest Accords. Remember, Ukraine was supposed to have surrender its nuclear weapons in exchange for integrity. That integrity was violated, and Zelensky started talking about getting nuclear weapons back. We know the example of Israel, where the United States delivered a nuclear weapon to Israel under the cover of the night in order to protect it, and Putin was afraid of something like that. Second thing, the reason why the negotiations broke down is because Zelensky did not want Ukraine to surrender its possible membership in NATO. The way NATO works, North Atlantic Alliance, is if one of the members gets attacked, means all NATO gets attacked. And Putin was not and is not prepared to fight a war against NATO. So now you have two factors. Zelensky is talking about getting nuclear weapons back. He's right to do so legally. And you have a possible membership on an emergency basis in NATO. Right? He had to attack because if Ukraine would have joined NATO, I'm not excusing him. I'm talking about geopolitics, the corner into which he placed himself. If Ukraine is part of NATO, Ukraine can now start defending Crimea, taking its land back. If Ukraine is trying to take its land back and Putin is trying to defend it, he has to fight NATO. So he was cornered. In fact, at his press conference yesterday, he looked incredibly uncertain because he has taken that decision already and was answering questions in a manner that is uncharacteristic to him. And once again, add his propensity for flair and cold-heartedness. Right? So you have someone who is a KGB agent, loves disinformation, wants the Soviet Empire back, and now one of the potential spheres of influence wants to join NATO.
And just to pause for a second there, so people, because again, I'm sure there's, I'm not sure I'm not the only dumb one here. I'm not dumb, but some of us are dumb to this topic and the global affairs and even NATO in general. I have a map up here, like there are certain countries, right, that belong to NATO that we all sort of the people in NATO have to sort of back up, right? Ukraine is not currently in NATO. That's a big part of this because if they were, this would be a whole different thing. We would be in the midst of World War already, correct?
No. If they were, Putin would not have attacked.
Copy that. But saying if he did, then we would be at all-out war.
Correct.
Yeah, but you would think he would have avoided that.
It's not clear that you won't be. It is possible China will try to take over Taiwan while we're all focused on that.
Yeah, that's what's scary because there's a lot of, and then we're going to get there. There's so much other stuff, this idea of what else could happen because this is a distraction. Now there's so many theories of where else things could go. All right, but sorry, I interrupted you. Continue because I wanted to get to your reaction. And I also just want to say, yes, I'm paying attention. We are going to go live when Biden begins his speech. I do want to break to that so we can watch it together and then react. So I'm keeping my eye, and I will interrupt you guys. Sorry when that happens. But go ahead. James, did you want to say something quick before we get back to Ilya?
No, we could keep listening. I'm just.
Do you have any comments?
What's that?
Do you have any comments?
I think you're spot on. But I still think that there's no excuse for conducting an invasion into a sovereign nation. I mean, I think that
I'm not providing.
Diplomacy should have been the first course. I agree with you. I know.
I had to lay out the background, and the background is unfortunately not subject to a moral judgment.
Well, and what's sad is that I don't believe in whether you like politics or not, etc. Who you like, who your favorite is in the White House. I don't believe that this would happen under a different administration. I think that there is a void of leadership in the world right now, and I think that because of that, Putin is taking advantage of that. And like you mentioned, we are potentially going to see China make a move. They're watching things very closely. I think the events that unfolded in Afghanistan were the catalyst for starting some of this stuff and seeing that America has been somewhat weak recently when it comes to global leadership. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, because my usual job, I work as an artist, specifically making high-end arms and armor, right? And I actually thought that this was coming. I wasn't sure. For the past year on Russian artist social media, a lot of presentation daggers for officers became popular. Well, if there's an up spike in presentation arms, means awards, people need to be awarded. What will they be awarded for? Because expensive stuff takes a long time to make, means it was all planned in advance. All the awards, congratulations, so on for a successful operation. So things were going there just by looking at Russian social media, specifically people who make high-end stuff for high-ranking officers. We could have tracked that. I didn't want to open my mouth about it because I did not want to be someone who yells the sky is falling, and it doesn't. But it looked like that for a while. In fact, earlier last year, Russia allowed, against its own legal obligations, for Nagorno-Karabakh to be taken by Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a proxy buffer zone for Turkey, but Nagorno-Karabakh used to belong to Armenia. And the reason why it seems to be Russia allowed that to happen because Armenia was primarily...
Sorry, here we go.
Ukraine committed a genocide without any evidence. We saw a flagrant violation of international unilateral.
Hold on, I'm going to start it. I know we're a minute back, but let's watch it together live. Here we go. There are...
Ukraine. Good afternoon. The Russian military has begun a brutal assault on the people of Ukraine. Without provocation, without justification, without necessity, this is a premeditated attack. Vladimir Putin has been planning this for months, as we've been saying all along. He moved more than 175,000 troops, military equipment and positions along the Ukrainian border. He moved blood supplies into position and built a field hospital, which tells you all you need to know about his intentions all along. He rejected every good faith effort the United States and our allies and partners made to address our mutual security concerns through dialogue to avoid needless conflict and avert human suffering. For weeks, we have been warning that this would happen. And now it's unfolding largely as we predicted. In the past week, we've seen shelling increase in the Donbass, a region in eastern Ukraine controlled by Russian-backed separatists. The Russian government has perpetrated cyber attacks against Ukraine. We saw a staged political theater in Moscow, outlandish and baseless claims that Ukraine was about to invade and launch a war against Russia, that Ukraine was prepared to use chemical weapons, that Ukraine committed a genocide without any evidence. We saw a flagrant violation of international law in attempting to unilaterally create two new so-called republics on sovereign Ukrainian territory. And at the very moment that the United Nations Security Council was meeting to stand up for Ukraine's sovereignty, to stave off invasion, Putin declared his war. Within moments, missile strikes began to fall on historic cities across Ukraine. Then came the air raids, followed by tanks and troops rolling in. We've been transparent with the world. We've shared declassified evidence about Russia's plans and cyber attacks and false pretexts so that there could be no confusion or cover-up about what Putin was doing. Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences. Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what can be exported to Russia. This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time. We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize the long-term impact on Russia and to minimize the impact on the United States and our allies. I want to be clear, the United States is not doing this alone. For months, we've been building a coalition of partners representing well more than half the global economy. 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, to amplify the joint impact of our response. I just spoke with the G7 leaders this morning, and we're in full and total agreement. We will limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen to be part of the global economy. We'll limit their ability to do that. We're going to stunt the ability to finance and grow the Russian military. We're going to impose and we're going to impair their ability to compete in high-tech 21st century economy. We've already seen the impact of our actions on Russia's currency and the ruble, which early today hit its weakest level ever in history. The Russia stock market plunged today. The Russian government borrowing rates spiked by over 15%. In today's actions, we've now sanctioned Russian banks that together hold around $1 trillion in assets. We've cut off Russia's largest bank, a bank that holds more than 1/3 of Russia's banking assets by itself, cut it off from the U.S. financial system. And today, we're also blocking 4 more major banks. That means every asset they have in America will be frozen. This includes VTB, the second largest bank in Russia, which has $250 billion in assets. As promised, we're also adding the names to the list of Russian elites and their family members that we're sanctioning as well. As I said on Tuesday, these are people who personally gain from the Kremlin's policies, and they should share in the pain. We will keep up this drumbeat of those designations against corrupt billionaires in the days ahead. On Tuesday, we stopped the Russian government from raising money from U.S. or European investors. Now we're going to apply the same restrictions to Russia's largest state-owned enterprises, companies with assets that exceed $1.4 trillion. Some of the most powerful impacts our actions will come over time as we squeeze Russia's access to finances and technology for strategic sectors of its economy, and degrade its industrial capacity for years to come. Between our actions and those of our allies and partners, we estimate that we'll cut off more than half of Russia's high-tech imports. It will strike a blow to their ability to continue to modernize their military. It'll degrade their aerospace industry, including their space program. It'll hurt their ability to build ships, reducing their ability to compete economically. And it will be a major hit to Putin's long-term strategic ambitions. And we're preparing to do more. In addition to the economic penalties we're imposing, we're also taking steps to defend our NATO allies, particularly in the East. Tomorrow, NATO will convene a summit. We'll be there to bring together the leaders of 30 allied nations and close partners to affirm our solidarity and to map out the next steps we will take to further strengthen all aspects of our NATO alliance. Although we provided over $650 million in defensive assistance to Ukraine just this last year, let me say it again. Our forces are not and will not be engaged in the conflict with Russia in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight in Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies and reassure those allies in the East. As I made crystal clear, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power. And the good news is, NATO is more united and more determined than ever. There is no doubt that the United States and every NATO ally will meet our Article 5 commitments, which says that an attack on one is an attack on all. Over the past few weeks, I ordered thousands of additional forces to Germany and Poland as part of our commitment to NATO. On Tuesday, in response to Russia's aggressive action, including its troop presence in Belarus and the Black Sea, I've authorized the deployment of ground and air forces already stationed in Europe to NATO's eastern flank allies, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Romania. Our allies have also been stepping up, adding the other allies, the rest of NATO, adding their own forces and capabilities to ensure collective defense. And today, within hours of Russia's unleashing its assault, NATO came together and authorized and activated an activation of response plans. This will enable NATO's high readiness forces to deploy and when and where they are needed to protect our NATO allies on the eastern boundaries of Europe. And now I'm authorizing additional U.S. force capabilities to deploy to Germany as part of NATO's response, including some of the U.S.-based forces that the Department of Defense placed on standby weeks ago. I've also spoken with Defense Secretary Austin and Chairman of Joint Chiefs General Milley about preparations for additional moves should they become necessary to protect our NATO allies and support the greatest military alliance in the history of the world, NATO. As we respond, my administration is using the tools, every tool at its disposal to protect American families and businesses from rising prices at the gas pump. You know, we're taking active steps to bring down the cost, and American oil and gas companies should not exploit this moment to hike their prices to raise profits. You know, in our sanctions package, we specifically designed. I know this is hard and that Americans are already hurting. I will do everything in my power to limit the pain the American people are feeling at the gas pump. This is critical to me. But this aggression cannot go unanswered. If it did, the consequences for America would be much worse. America stands up to bullies. We stand up for freedom. This is who we are. Let me also repeat the warning I made last week. If Russia pursues cyber attacks against our companies, our critical infrastructure, we are prepared to respond. For months, we've been working closely with the private sector to harden their cyber defenses, sharpen our ability to respond to Russian cyber attacks as well. I spoke last night to President Zelensky of Ukraine, and I assured him that the United States, together with our allies and partners in Europe, will support the Ukrainian people as they defend their country. We'll provide humanitarian relief to ease their suffering. In the early days of this conflict, Russia propaganda outlets will keep trying to hide the truth and claim success for its military operation against a made-up threat. But history has shown, time and again, how swift gains in territory eventually give way to grinding occupations, acts of mass civil disobedience, and strategic dead ends. The next few weeks and months will be hard on the people of Ukraine. Putin has unleashed a great pain on them. But the Ukrainian people have known 30 years of independence. They've repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. This is a dangerous moment for all of Europe, for the freedom around the world. Putin has committed an assault on the very principles that uphold the global peace. Now, the entire world sees clearly what Putin and his Kremlin allies are really all about. This was never about a genuine security concerns on their part. It was always about naked aggression, about Putin's desire for empire by any means necessary, by bullying Russia's neighbors through coercion and corruption, by changing borders by force, and ultimately by choosing a war without a cause. Putin's actions betray his sinister vision for the future of our world, one where nations take what they want by force. But it is a vision that the United States and freedom-loving nations everywhere will oppose with every tool of our considerable power. The United States and our allies and partners will emerge from this stronger, more united, more determined, and more purposeful. Putin's aggression against Ukraine will end up costing Russia dearly, economically and strategically. We will make sure of that. Putin will be a pariah on the international stage. Any nation that countenances Russia's naked aggression against Ukraine will be stained by association. The history of this era is written. Putin's choice to make a totally unjustifiable war on Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. Liberty, democracy, human dignity, these are the forces far more powerful than fear and oppression. They cannot be extinguished by tyrants like Putin and his armies. They cannot be erased by from people's hearts and hopes by any amount of violence and intimidation. They endure. In the contest between democracy and autocracy, between sovereignty and subjugation, make no mistake, freedom will prevail. God bless the people of a free and democratic Ukraine, and may God protect our troops. Associated Press, Zeke.
Oh, he's going to do questions. I didn't think he would.
Speak with President Putin at this point, and what interactions have you had with the Russian government?
I heard the first part. Do I have any plans to speak with Putin at this point, and what?
What communications have you had with the Kremlin as far as military operations in Ukraine and making sure this does not spiral into a larger conflict?
Well, it's a large conflict already. The way we're going to ensure it's not going to aspire to a larger conflict is by providing all the forces needed in the Eastern European nations that are members of NATO. NATO is more united than it's ever been, and I have no plans to talk with Putin. Wall Street Journal, Tarina.
Mr. President, you didn't mention SWIFT in your sanctions that you announced. Is there a reason?
Maybe more consequence than SWIFT, number one. Number two, it is always an option, but right now that's not the position that the rest of Europe wishes to take.
Does anyone know what SWIFT was?
SWIFT is like an international banking, clearing kind of...
Sir, sanctions clearly have not been enough to deter Vladimir Putin to this point. What is going to stop him? How and when does this end? And do you see him trying to go beyond Ukraine? And a second question I'll just give to you now. This statement that he gave last night, the threat that he gave, the West will face consequences greater than any you have faced in history. Is he threatening a nuclear strike?
I have no idea what he's threatening. I know what he has done, number one. And number two, no one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening. It has to show, this is going to take time, and we have to show resolve so he knows what's coming. And so the people of Russia know what he's brought on them. That's what this is all about. This is going to take time. It's not going to occur. He's going to say, oh my God, these sanctions are coming, I'm going to stand down. He's going to
What's the
test
purpose of the
resolve
sanctions,
in the West to see if we stay together, and we will.
Yeah.
We will, and we'll
It's a
oppose
long.
Is this
time.
serious?
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Will he go beyond Ukraine, sir? Do you see him
Guys,
going
we're going to
across?
react. I just want to hear what this is obviously important here.
Two topics, just really quick. First, markets are down and gas prices are up. I know you always stress the difference between Wall Street and Main Street, but everybody seems to be in for some economic pain. How economically painful is it going to get for people in this
this
country?
long game to play?
First of all, there's no doubt that when a major nuclear power attacks and invades another country, that the world is going to respond, and markets can respond all over the world. So there's no doubt about that, number one. Number two, the notion that this is going to last for a long time is highly unlikely as long as we continue to stay resolved in imposing the sanctions we're going to impose on Russia, period. What's the next question? I'm sorry.
The next question is, did you underestimate Putin, and would you still describe him the way that you did in the summer as a worthy adversary?
At the time, I made it clear as an adversary, and I said he was worthy. I didn't underestimate him.
Seems like you did.
Read most of everything he's written. Did you read it? I shouldn't. I'm not a wise guy. You heard the speech he made. Almost an hour's worth of speech is why he was going into Ukraine. He has much larger ambitions in Ukraine. He wants to, in fact, reestablish the former Soviet Union. That's what this is about. And I think that his ambitions are completely contrary to the place where the rest of the world has arrived.
You're confident that these devastating sanctions are going to be as devastating as Russian missiles and bullets and tanks?
Yes.
No.
Russian bullets, missiles, and tanks in Ukraine.
Yeah, what is he talking about?
Yes, I am.
This is.
Remember, he called Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bitch. So this is good stuff.
I didn't say sanctions.
That was the guy who was asking the questions?
You've been talking about the threat of these sanctions for several weeks now.
Yes, but the threat of the sanctions and imposing the sanctions and seeing the effect of the sanctions are two different things.
Yeah, you just said no one expects the sanctions to work.
Going to begin to see.
Oh, we've got Boris Johnson, so I ain't got much room to talk, guys.
What will that do? How will that change his mindset here, given he's
because
attacking
it will so
Ukraine
weaken his country that he'll have to make
now.
a very, very difficult choices on whether to continue to move toward being a second-rate power or, in fact, respond.
You said in recent weeks that big nations cannot bluff when it comes to something like this. You recently said that the idea of personally sanctioning President Putin was on the table. Is that a step that you're prepared to take? And if not,
it's not a bluff, it's on the table.
Sanctioning President Putin?
Yes.
Why not sanction him today, sir?
Yeah.
Why not sanction him today?
He just invaded a sovereign nation.
I'm not going to answer.
You detailed some severe and swift new sanctions today and said the impact it will have over time. But given the full-scale invasion, given that you're not pursuing disconnecting Russia from what's called SWIFT, the international banking system, or other sanctions at your disposal, respectfully, sir, what more are you waiting for?
Specifically, with the sanctions we've imposed exceed SWIFT. The sanctions we imposed exceed anything that's ever been done. The sanctions we imposed have generated two-thirds of the world joining us. They are profound sanctions. Let's have a conversation in another month or so to see if they're working.
But he doesn't expect them to work.
Can I ask you about Zelensky? Sir, you spoke to Vladimir Zelensky yesterday, sir?
SWIFT is like the nuclear option of restricting a country's financial power.
We're watching the beginning of another Cold War, and is there now a complete rupture in U.S. and Russian relations?
There is a complete rupture right now in U.S.-Russian relations if they continue on this path that they're on. And in terms of a Cold War, that depends. You have the vast majority of the rest of the world in total opposition to what he's doing, from Asia to South America to Europe to around the world. And so it's going to be a cold day for Russia. The idea, you don't see a whole lot of people coming to his defense.
And are you, if I could follow up, sir, are you urging China to help isolate Russia? Are you urging China to help isolate Russia?
I'm not prepared to comment on that at the moment.
Fair enough. I can imagine there's a lot of back channels going on between USA and Russia. China at the moment.
Yeah.
Hey, at least
America,
he hasn't
China.
looked at his watch yet. you know,
He's had
or
his hand
done
up all
that.
the time.
Thank you, Mr. President. How concerned are you that Putin wants to go beyond Ukraine into other countries, and the U.S.
I don't think
will
they
have to get
understand
involved if he
Putin. They
moves
think that
into NATO
financial
countries?
sanctions
Well,
is
if
going
he
to
did
work.
move into NATO
He's got
countries, he will be
650
involved.
billion
We will be
approximately in
involved.
gold
The
and
only
foreign
thing that I'm
currency
convinced
reserves.
of is if we
Financial
don't
sanctions are
stop
going to
now,
do
he'll be
naff all
involved.
to him.
If we don't move
Suggest we
against
all
him
get the
now
best
with
Russian
these
thing we can right now, which is some
significant
vodka.
sanctions, he will be involved.
That one's made in Texas, there,
Look,
Andy.
you know, every well, anyway.
Can you talk anything more about your conversation? Can you, Mr. President,
Mr. President is getting tired, so he's not going to say
Why not sanction Putin directly?
Cheers.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sir, India, which is a major defense partner of the NATO states, is India fully with you on the issue of Ukraine and Russia?
Does the Defense Department of the United States?
Sir, India is one of your major defense partners. Is India fully in sync with United States on Russia?
We're in consultation with India today. We haven't resolved that completely.
One more question.
Okay, thank you all.
You'd hear people a lot more clearly if they took the masks off.
They look so silly with the masks. All right.
All right. Can I just start with the first question? Can I ask a question?
Yes.
He said companies that exceed more than $1.3 trillion. I don't know of any I mean, is there an American company out there that does 1.63 or 1.3 trillion dollars in revenue every year?
It's the total of the companies.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
It'll be
what
the
you're saying.
totality of it.
Got it. All right. I was kind of baffled when he said that. I was like, what? Okay, gotcha. All right, at least that clarifies it, because I thought for a second that he was in La La Land again.
Well, let me look. Can I just say something before we even get into this? Look, nobody cares what each of you guys think on Biden or Trump or anybody. It's not what we're here to do, is get into the politics of Biden sucks, Trump sucks. I think they all suck, personally. But I want to stay on the issue of we're going to war. This is something we got to discuss. We're not all going to maybe agree. But look, my instinct is like, why are we delaying this? Like at this point, I feel like everyone, you might like Biden, you might not like Biden. I feel like we all don't like Putin, right? So why isn't there a bigger option here to really take this out and not stretch this on? I want to go to you first, Ilya, because look, you are from Moscow. You're hearing this. Do you think these sanctions work? Are you pissed at Biden, at Putin and what he's doing to your country, this country of yours? What are your thoughts on this as we hear all that?
Okay, so there is a cultural context that a lot of Westerners don't understand. And everybody from North Korea, China, Belarus, Russia would understand. And that is, if you sanction a country, isolate it, you make the state stronger, because then the state is the only provider in the economy. And because the state is the only provider in the economy, people begin to rely more on it. So the sanctions will strengthen Putin inside the country more than the absence thereof. But sanctions are the primary tool of the OEC, NATO, UN, World Trade Organization, whatever. Like, sanctions is their favorite tool. Yeah. It is unlikely that right now many NATO countries will agree to go to war, because too many NATO countries have nuclear weapons. I mean, United States, Britain, France, I think India too. India, I think, is part of NATO. So, and nuclear powers do not go into direct conflict with other nuclear powers. That's the whole purpose of why other countries want nuclear powers. So what will happen? Sanctions will strengthen Putin inside, make him more radical, make him more capable of costly warfare that is costly from a human standpoint, but economically they stop being costly, because then the military sector is the primary sector inside the isolated economy. It used to be like that in the Soviet Union. It is like that in North Korea. What do you think North Korea's primary industry is inside? The military. Right? That's what's going to happen. What I'm hearing from Mr. President is a lot of words. Yes, sanctions will make some people unsatisfied, and I think he's hoping for the sanctions to bring Russia to a state of a coup where someone will eliminate Putin, somebody rich, for example. I think that's the only play for the sanctions. Putin is not afraid of sanctions. He is much more comfortable in a world with a planned economy and a discrete, specific external enemy, rather than a world where free trade and democracy exist.
So, I mean, what is your response to Putin here, being from Moscow? What is your reaction to all this as you're seeing it? I know you're angry.
The only way to resolve this crisis, and it's not going to be pleasant for Ukraine, right, is for Zelensky to invite Poland with 300 troops. The United States did that with West Germany, with 300 troops into Kiev. It is in international relations called a costly signal. You set up your troops as something you say, I'm willing to sacrifice this, but if any one of my troops get hurt, I'm invading, and trigger a NATO war, in which case Putin is not prepared to fight NATO. And what he will have to do is to say, basically, the regions of Donetsk and Donbass, which are basically like giant American states, together they compose half of Ukraine. He can say, that's all I wanted. I'm going to cut Ukraine in half, and everything to the east will be Russia. And that's the only way to actually stop a complete takeover of Ukraine. Because by itself, Ukraine just does not have the military capacity to overtake the Russian military. As a result, if Putin will continue advancing in Ukraine, what we'll get is guerrilla warfare, which Ukrainians are completely ready to fight. Almost everybody has weapons now there, anybody who cared to go and get some. And the problem with that is Putin is a master at frozen conflicts.
All right. Well, I think well said. I think a lot of the audience is agreeing with you. They like your well-leveled take on this. I mean, what do you think do you think they're going to, it makes sense. He doesn't want to go up against NATO. I don't, look, I'm ignorant to a lot of it, but what seems Putin is very smart. Putin is very smart, and I don't believe for a second he would have done what he's doing right now without planning for more heavy sanctions, right? He's got to be prepared for this.
I do not think Putin is very smart. What you interpret as intelligence and savvy is simply the case that he's using 19th century geopolitical tricks instead of 21st century. And in the 21st century, this sort of imperialism appears novel and unexpected.
Well said, but he's aware of what they're going to do, so he thinks. Do you think Biden has a better plan? Do you think Biden's plan will work?
Biden's plan right now is not to contain Putin, but to keep NATO together. Let's say Putin takes over Ukraine. What was the whole point of NATO if it allows Russia to take over a small democratic country? The whole point of NATO to deter this sort of aggression. And if Putin takes over Ukraine, that is the beginning of a slow decomposition of the entire alliance. And that's what Biden is concerned about. He wants to keep NATO together. He lost, as far as the way things look now, he does not seem to care very much about Ukraine. Otherwise, there would have been more American fighter jets handed over to the Ukrainian troops. No. He's trying to keep NATO together.
In your opinion, does Ukraine, the citizens of Ukraine, fight this out? I mean, they've got, 47 million people population. Russia's population, 141 million or 140 something million. Do they fight this out? Did they defend their country?
Right now, so I have some news because I've been receiving news.
I mean, they've shot down Russian jets, right?
In the Chernobyl's region, a column of 15 tanks stumbled across IEDs or anti-tank landmines. They were trying to capture a strategic point, but Ukrainian troops seem to have stalled them, and there are even some Russian military captives. So, right, Ukrainian troops are fighting now, but you don't see it very much because the technological potential of Russia is much higher than that of Ukraine. So there's a suppression of information that could be delivered to the outside world. TikTok actually ends up being the best way to get any news from Ukraine, surprisingly enough.
Just to ask then, in regards to, let's say, the larger state of play, so Putin, he wrote this big, massive ass essay like in 2021, and it's really interesting that you say, look, he's kind of got his head in like 19th century warplay tactics, because he kind of harbored back to like 17th century Russian worldview, seeing Ukraine as part of like the Great Russia, Little Russia, White Russia situation. So forgive my pronunciations, but if I remember rightly from my degree, the Veliko-Russians, the Malarussians, and the Belarusians. So with him doing this full-scale, large invasion with Ukraine, does his essay back in 2021 actually spell out a larger ambition that he's not just going to stop in Ukraine? He's going eventually for all or as many former Soviet countries as possible.
In earlier 2000s, Putin actually managed to give an interview to one of the quasi-opposition newspapers in Moscow. And at the time, he was either he asked or he was asked, what do you think your major accomplishment as the president will be? And the response, an example from the journalist to Putin was, well, you unified the Greek and Russian Orthodox Church. To which Putin said, only? And after that moment, Putin started becoming very aggressive on the international stage, because as an egotist, he did not want for that to be his legacy. So he went on to the campaign of unifying the ex-empire together. And that's what he seems to do.
Yeah.
Well, it's sad that while we're talking about all the policy and all of the things that go into effect there, what's sad is that there's civilians that are tied up in this, and as so often are the case with war, but it was an unprovoked action, and civilians have already been killed. There are civilian casualties that have occurred, and it's easy for us to sit wherever we're sitting and talk about this and then not remember the human element of it. And there's a lot of people in Ukraine right now, I think, that need our prayers. Even Russians that are getting sent in that may not want to, participate in this, that are doing so because they're ordered to. Again, I'm interested in your thoughts on the matter, but I think that there is an old statement, and what was it? I think it's a Stalin statement, right? Didn't he say that? What was it? Something about statistics versus a number, or tragedy is one, and then a million or a number that large is a statistic. I know I'm butchering that, but is that I guess fair to say here?
On the topic of human cost, Ukraine is a small country that for a brief period in its history was given a glimpse of independence. And now that independence is being taken away, it's been maximum 6 years of independence, quasi-independence. And the cost of that are not only to any particular individual who is dying or suffering or seeing the loved ones lost. It is what is being set up is a regret, sorrow, and resentment that will last for centuries right now. Like it will be very difficult for Russians to look Ukrainians in the face after this. It will be very difficult. And especially to the ones that actually have a semblance of dignity inside of them, because that's the part of your soul that hurts. It will be very difficult to have a civil conversation without this state between a Russian and a Ukrainian from this.
What are you hearing on the ground from people that you know in Russia in terms of how do they feel about Putin, and are they supportive of this action?
Well, I was going to say I could add one. I'm not going to say where I got this from, and please add more, Ilya. But I had a friend who I was trying to get called in, but she's pretty emotional about it all, and I understand. But I was checking in. Are you okay? Morally, I'm in shock. I can't believe what Putin is doing to in my name. It hurts so much. He destroyed everyone's future. She herself has ancestors from Ukraine. Nobody, in caps, nobody I know in Russia approves this war. Yeah, they're really upset from what I'm gathering from the people I've spoken to. But Ilya, what have you heard?
So I'm not sure how to distinguish between bots and actual people, right? Like when I'm looking at social media, it's very difficult to distinguish. Some are clearly bots. Depending on where you go, most independent places think it's an absolute travesty, and there have been protests, no to war, silent protests. But you have to understand that Russia is a political context where the SWAT team can knock on your door for sharing a meme. It is in the Russian law since 2015, I believe, that is a criminal offense to question the territorial integrity of Russia. Basically, if you publicly on social media say that those regions are not Russia, you can be sent to prison for 5 years, right? So it's very difficult for people to express themselves honestly on social media, because there have been cases of people sent to prison for just sharing a meme or saying that Crimea belongs to Ukraine.
I mean, there's a story literally, we didn't know this when we were talking about it, just looked it up, but 34 minutes ago, the New York Times, thousands of Russian protests about President Vladimir Putin's assault on Ukraine. Some chant no to war, and apparently they've been met with heavy police resistance. I don't know if you can pull that up. Andy.
Yep, got it.
I'd heard that well, there's many reasons, but part of the reason in regards to his invasion of Ukraine was also to try and quieten the dissent within Russia itself, because, you know, a lot of Russians may look to their neighbor Ukraine and be like, look, you know, they've got it so much more easier, all this freedom, this, that, and the other. Why can't we have that freedom? And it's like a little bit of like a chess moving away to invade Ukraine and be like, no, the grass ain't green on the other side, because guess what? They're part of us now. So is there kind of like that going on as well?
There is a truth to that, and because you want to prevent people from looking on the other side and seeing, well, maybe we should try it. There is a truth to that. It's an analog. If you scrape your knee, you sanitize it, and Putin is trying to sanitize the internal political sphere of Russia from bad ideas, as he calls them, Western imported ideas. On the topic of Chernobyl, by the way.
Yeah, so I wanted to get there because this has been breaking, but just to recap, and I'm going to go right to you, but they're saying they took the power plant. It's been captured by forces. There was apparently a battle. There was some fighting that happened, but now they've taken that plant. We were talking before the stream, but Ilya, what are your thoughts on this? Why do you think this was part of plan? I mean, honestly, it sounds like a weird action movie. Like, we're going to go take back the rock and find the nuclear codes underneath or something. Like, is there something sinister here that we should be worried about?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, but so the power plant is not active. The problem is underneath the power plant, there's a abundant supply of radioactive material. And radioactive material, if there will be guerrilla warfare or retaliation from Ukraine, could be used against Russian troops and inside Russia to organize terrorist attacks or create dirty bombs, right? You don't need a nuclear weapon. All you need is a weapon that has toxic nuclear material in it in order to do as much damage, pretty much, because you're attacking people and almost using it as a chemical weapon. That's why that was a specific strategic spot for the Russian military, to capture an easily accessible supply of radioactive materials.
But from a geographical perspective as well, coming in from the north, Belarus, it's literally just 2 hours away from the capital of Kiev. So they've also got a major road line to literally the capital, because ultimately, if President Putin captures Kiev, that is one major symbolic win for him. and he's like 2 hours close to that. Like, there has to be that kind of perspective as well for it, I would imagine.
Well, it's a strategic spot too, but what is in the strategic spot is more important, because if there's a guerrilla warfare and you give, guerrillas access to nuclear materials, they become much more effective in terrorizing the enemy. So that's much more important. One thing to note, when they were taking the Chernobyl exclusion zone, the Russian military used outdated technology to enter, specifically. You can make anything you want out of it, maybe because they already planned on taking it to begin with, and they don't want to contaminate expensive technology. It is possible that they're meeting much more resistance than they anticipated.
So that could be a positive, hopefully. Go ahead, Steph.
Do you feel that Putin, in a way, is invading out of fear because the costs of fighting are like dwarfed by, let's say, the risk of inaction because of his perceived fear of NATO and the expansion within Ukraine?
Dictators operate exactly the way you described.
Yeah.
Like, what can I say? I mean, anytime North Korea has problems with sanctions and stuff, they start launching warheads into the sky, and then, things get a little bit better for them. Like, that's how dictators operate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, what's so weird to me, this whole idea of like, sorry, let me get this back up. This whole idea that they're taking over Chernobyl here to try and use the toxic things. Like, isn't that bad for them too? Like, they're going to all get sick being there as they do this. Like,
all you have to do is hold the strategic spot. You don't have to use it.
But you're saying they're going to gather some toxic elements to sort of give the guerrillas.
No. If there is, so imagine you're Ukraine, right? You already basically lost a war, but you don't want to lose your country. Civilians or ex-military start organizing guerrilla warfare. What can you use to oppose fighter jets, ballistic missiles, drone strikes? What can you use to oppose that? Radioactive bombs.
Yeah.
That's why. Like, it's to prevent Ukraine from using those to defend itself. Like, you can dig in the ground and find it. It's enough to poison a market. It's enough to, Osama bin Laden would have loved that, to have access to that, basically.
Right. Well, I mean,
anyway.
Another question is, does I guess it's a little late now, but I mean, would Putin use that as disinformation too? Would he do that to his own people and then try to blame Ukraine for that? Would you put anything past Putin?
Do you know how Putin came to power?
Refresh my memory.
He was appointed by Boris Yeltsin with assurances that none of Yeltsin's family will be touched after him. The problem is, at the time, there was a problem with Chechnya and all that stuff, and he needed to assure Russia that he's a strong leader and consolidate power of the security apparatus. All of a sudden, explosions start happening in Russia, Moscow, Volgodonsk, so on and so forth, right? Houses would be blowing up from hexogen. Hexogen is an explosive that is also poisonous to rats somehow, but it looks like white powder, very similar to sugar. There is a case in a town of Ryazan where apparently security officers were caught red-handed planting sacks of hexogen. When the police was called to detain the security officers, all of a sudden it was not explosives. Somehow it is just sugar, and they were conducting a training operation. But the confiscated sugar disappeared and was never evaluated, and the people who were caught somehow vanished into thin air. There are a substantial amount of circumstantial evidence to point out that it's possible Putin already staged terrorist attack in his own country. It's not like the conspiracy theory September 11th stuff. It's actual people think that, right. Like FSB generals, that he staged those to consolidate power and gain popularity. So if you're asking me, would he use that to bomb or stage attacks against his own people again? It looks like he already has done that.
Got it.
Or at least enough Russians believe that it's not beyond him to do that.
Got it. Well, guys, I have to jump off. I actually have about 30 different interviews we have to get to for Project Dynamo, which we were talking about in the beginning. And if anybody is interested in helping out with Project Dynamo, it's a group rescuing Americans from Ukraine right now. The State Department estimates there's anywhere from 10 to 30,000 Americans that are still in Ukraine, and they are currently conducting a rescue mission as we speak, getting them to an embassy in a neighboring country, driving through the countryside of Ukraine. So if anybody's interested in helping, projectdynamo.org. Again, projectdynamo.org.
I just put the link there, Project Dynamo, and I want to support James Judge. You're going for Congress, James? Is this what?
I am. I'm running for Congress. I'm fed up, man. I mean, and you know what? I don't know everything today. I was born here in the Tampa area. I served in the U.S. Coast Guard. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. But what I've seen the past 2 years is just I can't take it anymore. You know, it's ineptitude at another level. And career. I mean, if it was up to me, I'd fire everybody in Washington D.C. and start over, and get rid of the two-party system. It's just ridiculous. But I'm running because I'm sick and tired of yelling at my television screen. And I said, you know, I need to do something, because if I'm 70 or 80 years old, I'm going to wonder what would have happened if I would have run. The failed exit from Afghanistan was a disaster. What we're witnessing right now, I think, is because of a lack of leadership. And I don't think that Putin's worried about any, you know, I mean, as the president said, he doesn't think that the sanctions are going to do anything, which is shocking to me. When he said, no one, I wrote that down, direct quote, no one expects the sanctions to work. What? Yeah. It's crazy. So, right. Why do it? Why do it? Let's try something that might work. You know, in the meantime, I would say we loosen regulations on American oil to try to bolster productivity, to compensate for what's happening. I mean, something to put the global markets at ease. But anyways, that's I really came on to just talk about the awesome things that the volunteers were doing.
I was really impressed with what you were doing. You were streaming out with there, and I'm kudos. Please look up Project Dynamo, learn more about that, and donate if you can. And I just James is a buddy of mine, and I'm proud of him, and he's done a lot for me. So happy to promote him here in his bid for Congress. You know, I got your back.
Thank you.
Links are in the description, and they're also in the chat. And the mods have them as well. Thank you for being here, James. Come back sometime. I need your PR brain for a lot of these stories, so I'd love to have you back anytime you want.
Absolutely. And people that don't know about Dynamo, they are run by a lot of veterans. It's run by a lot of veterans. It's volunteer. They've rescued about 2,000 people from Afghanistan. And now the first batch of approximately 24 or so Americans are on their way out of Ukraine. So it will be an ongoing process, I'm sure, if you can donate, projectdynamo.org. Thank you guys so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge.
Everything.
Talk soon.
Lovely to meet you, Mr. Judge. Bye-bye.
Likewise. Thank you. Take care.
Well, all right. Well, there's still plenty. I want to get to some of your comments. It's a good break. I have a lot more questions for you, Ilya. I'm sure you two may as well, Steph, but I don't want to ignore the commenters too long, and I know a bunch stacked in. So if you have a question for Ilya, especially in his insight here, which has been so valuable, I'm so grateful it's so random. I was literally about to post, who can I get that's a expert on this? And I get a random call from DC, and I'm like, what? Who is this? And I'm all like, hello? He's like, hey. I'm like, who's this? He's like, it's Ilya. I'm like, well, who? What? I'm like, oh my God, Ilya. It was like all timing. Couldn't have been more perfect. So, and thank you, Matt. I think Matt was reaching out too. Literally, just as I was trying to find my Russian historical expert on all this, Ilya just reached out and fell into my lap. And I was so thankful. I'm so sad I didn't think about it on my own, but I'm so grateful we got connected. And Ilya, you've been amazing here. But let me go through this quickly. Dorothy, thank you so much, Dorothy. This was an hour ago. Thanks for covering this, Andy plus team. Thank you, Dorothy, for supporting. And at Ars Bars, thank you earlier, dropping $20. Thank you, Andy, for covering this. Some people might not care, but it will impact our lives one way or another. Oh, it's gonna. Those gas prices will go up no matter what they say. But thank you for supporting. Megan as well. Thank you for the super chat sticker. I appreciate you. Heather Welch dropping a 20. Money. This one made me laugh. I responded during. Heather said, money isn't going to mean anything soon, but here you go. Help you be prepared. Good luck, guys. I hope you're wrong. I think you are wrong, but I appreciate the try and attempt to chuckle. I will accept the money. If you guys want to think it's nothing and give it to me, I will take that bet. So thank you, Heather, for making me laugh and sending me some of your money. That is going to mean nothing soon. Gene Rick, thank you for your super chat sticker. Always lovely to see you. And then Jade Rain became a member today. Thank you, Jade. And then Kara Froman, always good to hear from you, Kara. Thank you for breaking this down for everyone. Happy to. Estimated 1989 also became a member. The memberships help us a lot because that way YouTube doesn't always just tell you guys what's happening, let alone what we're doing. You can always hit that join button to become a member, pick a tier, get some next level folks in the building. Anybody who wants to support this channel and our coverage, we try to keep it real. I try to get as many experts. And if you guys know of some other experts, reach out to me, let me know. Always need some of my Rolodex to make sure we can talk about all the issues here. And then Michelle also became a member. Welcome, Michelle. And Megan sent another super chat sticker. Audrey, thank you for your super chat sticker. The British Prime Minister says this hasn't happened since World War II. Live today, where this has been a threat to a free country. What your opinions? Is this true? So the British Prime, and some good news. It's my birthday. Well, Audrey, thank you for the super chats. Happy birthday! And Audrey's asking, and if you guys have any other questions you want to ask, we'll go through some more things here. But let us know. You can send it over using the Stream Elements link as the ideal way to support and tip. It's in the pinned comment link above. It should be. Do we have the pinned? Did I not pin the comment today?
No, you didn't.
Oh, that's why. I'll do it real quick. The pinned comment, let me put it right there, is always the best way to do it. I think I did it, but then I forgot to pin it. There it is. Use the Stream Elements link if you can. Pinned. And that way you can get your comments in. Excuse me. But thank you for those who already knew how this works and did it anyway. Audrey asked, Prime Minister says this hasn't happened since World War II, where there has been a threat to a free country. What your opinion, is this true? What do you think? Steph? Is this you think this is yeah, what other thing has prompted a near world war?
I can't think of one since World War II. I would say yeah. Okay, you've had the Iraq War, you've had the Afghanistan War, but they were largely contained. That didn't really kick off like a World War III situation, or no one ever contemplated that it would ever come close to that. You got the Bosnian War between like the early 90s to mid 90s, but then that was more like within the country itself between different ethnicities. So that really don't. Cold War.
Iliad, are we missing something?
Cold War maybe, where it really came close maybe to World War III. Cuban Missile Crisis, maybe.
I think Boris Johnson said that about this hasn't happened. Okay, well, he's technically correct because a free country was not invaded by another serious power since World War II. That is technically correct. They've been precedent. The major reason why he's so concerned about it because it's happening in Europe. Yeah. If it would have been happening in Asia, no one would have cared.
No.
No one in Europe would have cared. But right now, it is so close to NATO, and because of the articles, NATO articles are written, he's afraid it will start a chain reaction. And the problem is the chain reaction is the exact only thing that would stop Putin. So he's afraid of this actual solution.
And I would argue actually that the chain reaction's already started. I think it's inevitable that it's going to come to a point where NATO's going to get involved. I can't see it. Yeah, because honestly, like from where I'm sitting and all the news that I'm seeing and getting to grips with, I think the chain reaction's already started, and NATO's eventually gonna enter into the equation because they're gonna realize pretty quickly that their self-delusion, that these mandates to I've had a brain fart now, to financially cripple Russia, the sanctions, are not going to work. He has internally within the country reserves of gold and foreign currency of like 650 billion plus. So these sanctions are going to do naff all. Once they realize that and get over that self-delusion, what else do they have at their disposal at that point other than starting to send troops in, whether that's NATO or something else. But NATO to me just seems to be like the more natural kind of progression after the sanctions.
What's going to happen? Even under sanctions, socialist states are pretty good, or ex-socialist states are pretty good existing under sanctions and under blockades.
Yeah.
Remember, as soon as the Soviet Union was born, it was basically under sanctions from the West.
Yep.
And everybody in Putin's cabinet, all the generals, they grew up during the Cold War. They understand how that operates. They're very comfortable under sanctions. Now, what's going to happen is Putin will theoretically take over Ukraine and stop for a bit. He can suffer the sanctions and wait a couple of years for NATO to keep arguing with themselves what they should have done, so on and so forth. And then somewhere else in the East, in the other old republics, he can stage another conflict. Kazakhstan, I think, recently had a problem with protests because the people demanded lower gas prices. Putin declared those people terrorists. The local government declared them terrorists. They managed to actually effect some change, but that's his excuse next time, to take over other countries. There's internal tension. There are some Russians to be defended. We're going to go in. And that's a standard. That excuse for military incursion has been used by many countries before. Israel, for example. In fact, in 2014, I believe, there was an article, I think in the Wall Street Journal or New York Post or New York Times. I forgot where because it was so long time ago. And it's literally titled American Foreign Policy Coming Home to Roost. And there was written apropos Putin taking over Crimea. Why? Because Putin was using the exact excuses that America was tolerating coming from Israel. So what Putin tends to do, he tends to wait for a precedent set up by the West and stage his situation to look enough like the precedent to not trigger international mechanisms. Remember, before the attack, one day before the attack, so yesterday or the day before yesterday, depending on where you are, he signed into Russian law that he's recognizing Donetsk and other break-off regions as part of Russia. And then, so now he's defending Russia. So he's staged, he's not, under international law, he is the aggressor. But within the legal context of the treaties with the breakaway regions that Putin signed, he's technically setting himself up for an excuse of, I actually did not invade another country. I was protecting parts of my country. He's very weak, but he also has a legal education. Yeah, too. He's also a lawyer.
He's also a really sexy horseback rider. Let's not forget.
Oh my goodness.
I want to. There's a comment in there. Shirtless in Siberia. There's a comment I see a lot, and I just want to ask you, Ilya, Steph. You can chime in as well. Like, I'm asking the stupid questions. Why not just try and go and take Putin out at this point? Like, what's the? How, is that an option on the table? You think for some?
How exactly would you do that?
Yeah, how?
I guess that's the problem, right? By doing folks are saying that starts the World War. That's where it gets crazy, and then you risk a lot by putting our forces in there to take him out, unless you did some sort of secret ops job or something, right? But
from a technical standpoint, the Soviet Union, or now Russia, can deploy a team of 15 people to take out the American president. The American president can deploy a team of 15 people to take out Putin, in theory. That's within the capabilities of both countries. The reason why it's not done is because that would spiral the international situation out of control, because it's technically against international law to assassinate leaders of other countries. That's why it's not done. It triggers an entire cascade of economic and military protocols that how they interact with each other, no one knows yet, in fact. Second, Let's say you are storming Putin's bunker where he's hiding, right? He has the nuclear button. Do you think the speed of the finger is slower than the speed with which you can break down a door? Let's say America will not suffer from the nuclear attacks, but entire Europe will.
Yep.
Right. You don't even know who he's going to attack. It's all. And my dad actually works as a tour guide over at the Titan Missile Museum in Tucson, Arizona, and I did the tour and I learned about that, where it's like they have systems in place now that literally, even if you were to bomb them, their bombs will be activated and bomb you after you bomb them, and it's sort of what stopped everyone, the nuclear threat, to an extent of like, well, what's the point in nuking if I'm just going to get nuked after? But you're right, if Putin's threatened and he's got nothing left to lose, then he might as well hit the button and say, well, then you're going out with me, and that's a pretty massive deal, and why it's a lot harder.
So, what was it? Oh, in 2004, in the United States, there was some problem with American elections, and there was some question whether the president is legitimate. And then in 2016, there was some question whether the president is legitimate. And then 2020, there was some question whether the president, like some rumors. Imagine another country comes in and takes out whoever is declared to be the president of the United States. What would be the line of retaliation by the United States against that country? Automatic. You can't. Yeah, you can't. You cannot just go in and take out a leader. That's the problem. That's the stalemate of diplomacy. It prevents certain things, and at the same time makes certain solutions that would have been expedient in the 15th century impossible.
So there you go, guys. For those asking, because I was asking myself too, like, let's just go take a team out, SEAL team, get in there and do it. But no, it's way more complicated than we think, and that's the problem here of how we have to have some diplomacy here. But it's interesting what you said, Ilya, about the fact that this is all to try and prompt a coup to get everyone inside around Putin, right, to be more and more upset at him, to maybe trigger that. Do you think if more protests and things happen, that could change the tune here, or do you think it's only going to anger him more?
He doesn't care about protests. The country where Putin was born, the Soviet Union, has imprisoned millions of people for the very sin of being too educated or squeaking about democracy, gulags. So he can imprison protesters indefinitely. In fact, if there are sanctions, the more protesters he will imprison, the more people will work for the economy for free. Like, it's the old system. So he's not afraid of protesters. The only thing he might be afraid of are people that are near him enough and have been careful enough to position themselves in a situation to stage a coup from the inside. And that's the only way the sanctions might work, which I really doubt.
So how do you think this ends?
I think it will taper off into a frozen conflict where Putin will will include Ukraine into his sphere of influence. He will be a sanctioned pariah for several years, up until the Biden administration will have to go away, or until the American elections, and then we will see some change. How it will end, one of the options is Russia turns into a version of North Korea. From a geopolitical standpoint.
That's terrifying.
Right? Isolated country, always squeaking about nuclear warheads, but turns into North Korea. Second option, there could be a coup, or Putin will get suddenly sick, and you will have some return to diplomacy. And the third is that what you're seeing today will, coming from the President of the United States, will be the continuous conversation between Russia and United States for the next 5 years. Just nothing's happening, a lot of words, a lot of sanctions. Because remember, China did not sign up for the sanctions.
Right.
Right?
It's a big, that's a big place to get a lot of stuff if they need it. And yeah, that doesn't really...
No. Like, if someone's familiar with the way banking and transactions work and the way sanctions interact with it, so that means that the sanctions that are imposed do not include sanctions on countries that choose to do business. with Russia.
Oh,
right?
interesting. So meaning like
Usually-
we're letting China still work with Russia is what that means.
Well, because the United States wants to work with China. Think about it. So the sanctions on Iran are, if you're dealing business with Iran as a company that makes hairbrushes, right? You're sanctioned. You can't sell hairbrushes, basically. Done.
So anybody, that's
Now-
interesting. Because I'm making so the sanction that has currently with Iran, anybody. But that includes anybody China. But you're saying there's a in this instance.
No. I'm giving you an example.
Got it. Okay,
I'm
sorry.
giving you an example of the way Iranian sanctions work. They basically work like that. Any country that deals or company that does business with Iran is investigated, suspected, and possibly sanctioned.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
That's not the case right now with Russia because China just this morning bought a tremendous amount of Russian wheat. You know what that means? Like, China doesn't need Russian wheat. It was fine without Russian wheat. It means China has delivered in advance the funds that Russia would need to offset the consequences of sanctions. Like, it was announced China bought Russian wheat this morning. And that means there was a dirty exchange for a lot of money. Google, China bought Russian wheat.
Which one?
That's the representative to the United Nations from China, I think, questioned American policy and proceeded to talk about the large purchase of wheat from Russia.
I mean, it's even hard to find in Google because I'm sure they don't want us to. They don't want us to know this.
But that was this morning. Now, last time I checked, a giant purchase of wheat is not a noteworthy event to be mentioned by a UN official.
Yeah, China okays Russian wheat import. Yeah.
Yeah, what does that mean? That's a signal that, first of all, you will not be fully sanctioned. And China probably paid Russia more for that wheat than that wheat is worth.
Right.
Money laundering.
Totally.
Right, so
Ozark happening right above our eyes. Yep.
Yep. China calls for talks over Ukraine and wheat import. Why would those two things be mentioned in the same thing, except to point out to the rest of the world that China will not be on board with the sanctions? Why is China not on board with the sanctions? Because China is looking at Taiwan. China is using this situation as a test run.
Oh,
Steph's mind's blown.
you're right.
Yeah. No, we said that earlier.
Bloody hell.
They're all watching this, and that's what Ilya said in the beginning. And it blew my
yeah,
mind too.
but China and Taiwan, damn, yeah. Damn, yeah.
If Putin can get away with this, right?
That
There's a lot of things
so
will try to do
much sense.
China is, in fact, militarily in a better position to defend its own takeover of Taiwan against the British and American forces than Russia is against the NATO forces, from the standpoint of military, because China has the largest fleet in the world.
Didn't they do like a practice cyber war game at one point, and they determined that China basically beat them in less than 10 minutes or something, like completely just effed them over in 10 minutes.
Exactly. China is looking very carefully about the situation. China is looking very carefully about this is a test run of how the international community would respond. And trust me, China is a much more important trading partner to the West than Russia is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a first run, right? It's like, let's see how they play this out so we can learn from it and do it better next time. Or can we get away with this, or will we not? And that's what's, it'll be, this seems like this is going to be a very long, arduous thing. This is not going to go over. And that's traditionally what happens, right? I mean, war, what's also going to be scary is like what else is going to happen because we're at war, right? There's going to be a lot of corporations and countries and things that are going to exploit this distraction to do other things. Do you agree, Ilya?
I don't agree with the phrasing I don't think corporations use things like that as a distraction. Corporations tend to use such instability as an opportunity rather than distraction. Because it used to be the case, I believe, not Louis Vuitton, I think Macy's used to make firearms for the U.S. military, like one of those companies. Like, I'm not like super familiar with the acquisitions process in the mid-20th century United States, but companies do that all the time. I'm not too concerned about corporations doing things because corporations are self-interested in profit. So you can at least predict what they're going to do based on whether it brings them money or not. And corporation is only interested in profits if it's also capable of turning those profits into future investments and returns. And there's no point for Jeff Bezos to move his entire business into North Korea. So companies are actually interested in diplomacy. Remember, capital. So that's one of the things that people don't understand about how political economy works. Capitalism is, by definition, anti-nationalist. Capitalism requires the absolute free flow of goods in a predictable manner within the context of consistent laws. Conflict breaks consistency and breaks reliability of laws. So capitalist institutions will be against military conflict generally. They will use military conflict because they still have to make a profit, so they'll find, economically speaking, a silver lining. But long-term strategy for any corporation is actually peace. I know a lot of people will disagree with it. They'll tell me about blood diamonds, but remember, blood diamonds and all those companies were basically companies making a deal with local dictators. So it was not the company itself. It was benefiting off an opportunity a dictator provides. It's not that the company pushes Congress to invade. However, when a company like Halliburton, for example, smells that there will be a war between the United States and Iraq, it will be the first one to make sure that there will be some profit. It's not that Halliburton is asking for an invasion, but it sure wants the first dibs on rebuilding.
Right.
But in principle, capitalist institutions want to avoid war.
One hopes. One hopes.
In
well
principle.
Said. Yeah.
Now, principles can be violated at tremendous costs.
And yeah, I mean, Steph, did you have any other questions to ask before I move on to some other issues? Just want to make sure I got you in there. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. I just there's a lot of like talking UK about NATO, which is where that's why I'm kind of like leaning towards that area at the moment. And so, I suppose the question for you, Ilya, is what is it going to take for Russia to lead NATO to basically act upon Article 5, apart from, you know, invading one of the actual NATO countries? Because Ukraine was like in talks, or at least, you know, voicing their intentions that they wanted to invade NATO, which again, that's why I said earlier on, you know, he's invading out of fear because he doesn't want them to go to NATO. But
so I can put on my evil hat on.
Yeah.
And I can tell you exactly what I would do if I were Ukraine to trigger that. I would, because most Ukrainians are Russian speaking, find some Ukrainian troops, dress them up as Russian troops, and stage something that could be either interpreted as an invasion or a mistake, where fire is directed across the border from Ukraine by seemingly Russian forces onto NATO territory.
Yeah.
You have to make it plausible enough that is possibly a mistake, so it's not blatant, but you can trigger Article 5.
Yeah.
By a provocation.
Yeah.
And that's those things seem to be quite common.
And just so we're clear, Article 5 is if a NATO ally is under attack. That's where that triggers all allies of NATO must step up and defend.
Because Ukraine was seen as a somewhat quasi-ally in the sense of that, you know, it was in talks or providing its intentions that it wanted to join NATO. Hence another reason why Putin has done.
Attacked. And that's why Putin attacked. Putin did not allow for Ukraine to join NATO.
Correct, yeah. Yeah. Because all the major, like, gas pipeline, like 80% of Europe's gas from Russia goes through Ukraine. He wanted to make sure that he still had the influence over Ukraine, and by losing it to NATO, he sees that as a slip of the influence that he has on it. And the gas pipelines that feed into Europe via Ukraine in the first place.
I don't think it was a gas pipeline, because you can build gas pipelines anytime and around places. It was not the gas pipeline. It was the following chain of events. Ukraine joins NATO, and then Ukraine starts fighting and recapturing its territories like Crimea. Russia will fight back. Article 5 is immediately enacted, means all countries will have to fight Russia.
Correct.
And the whole purpose of Ukraine to join NATO is to protect its territory, which possibly includes Crimea. So Putin had to act now to defend Crimea, which is where the Russian fleet is in the Black Sea, as a strategic point. So he was pushed by, he set up the situation himself in such a way where he had to go to war with Ukraine, because Ukraine would not drop its demand that it wants to join NATO. That was the point where the negotiations broke down. Because
I remember that.
Ukraine's membership in NATO means loss of Crimea. And loss of Crimea for Putin is at the same time loss of his throne. Because if Putin loses Crimea, there will be enough of a turmoil within the Kremlin to possibly replace him. And Putin knows he will not be replaced in a manner where he will go to Hawaii and relax. If Putin is replaced, he has outdone himself in such a way that he will not live long enough after his retirement.
we all know their tricks. They've allegedly, but my belief, they've already attacked UK soil twice with the poisonings. So yeah, they have their ways. No matter where you are in the freaking world, they've got their ways to get to you. It's disgusting, but yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that makes more sense actually. Thank you for that.
The only way to help Ukraine right now, as any Western civilian can, is to send people money. Some of that money they will spend on weapons. So you have to understand that some of that money will be spent by civilians to get weapons to defend themselves. And some people are not okay with their money being used for weapons. So just Ukraine's economy is can be described as fucked right now because of the situation. Ukraine is a no-fly zone, and will be.
Sorry, Ukraine's a no-fly zone. Since when?
Yep, since this morning. The sky, Ukraine is a no-fly zone.
Well, hang on a minute, because our Prime Minister, there was like an emergency Parliament question for Prime Minister, and he turned around and said that the no-fly zone is being considered, but not enacted as of yet.
He doesn't have to be the one enacting it. A no-fly zone can be declared by Russia.
So who's declaring it?
Russia can declare it a no-fly zone. I mean,
this was 8 hours
ago. Because that's a. I mean, as you will know, that's a bit. And for the audience that don't know, that's a big, massive declaration of any country to impose a no-fly zone. Because that brings on another level of complexity.
Yeah, they're still asking for it 4 hours ago. I don't know if that happened.
I don't. Unless something's broke and you've seen it and we've not caught it yet, that it's being declared.
I could be misremembering, or I could have been talking about an effective no-fly zone, because airline companies are not flying in that region whatsoever.
I mean, that would make sense.
That makes more sense now.
So, I mean, there are missiles in the air, so.
Yeah. It's like a quasi life no-fly zone. It's not being announced, but it might as well be in terms of it's not in theory, but in practice it is. Let's say.
I mean,
yeah.
I can't imagine a private company choosing to forego liabilities and direct anything. No.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
And I can't imagine Putin not shooting down any aircraft has not vetted. So,
well, didn't that happen anyway? Like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, it wasn't really cleared, but you know,
that situation was unclear. That situation was unclear whether it was intentional or a mistake.
Yes, it's not entirely clear. However, there is an argument to state that at least it was possibly Russian separatists that fired.
No, it was Russian separatists. The question was whether they were actually targeting civilian aircraft or whether they mistook it for a military one.
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, someone commented, Season M, the president offered guns to everybody who can defend themselves. Yes, that's correct. They're preparing for guerrilla warfare because it's unlikely they will be able to win an actual one. Yeah, already. The problem is there have been enough refugees already produced by the less than 24 hours of this conflict.
Yep.
Germany declared it's willing to accept Ukrainian refugees already. I think so did Poland and Lithuania.
Well, the EU, they're all meeting tonight. If not, they're already meeting right now.
Problem is Ukraine is
to
not
discuss.
a member of the EU.
Sorry, what was that, Ile?
Ukraine is not a member of the EU. Last night there was, I don't remember, was it last night or the day before, some members of the EU signed an agreement with Ukraine to possibly accept it as an EU candidate on an emergency basis. I'm not certain whether that resolution has binding power at all.
Yeah, who knows with them?
Like, EU operates in a very weird way like that.
Yeah. I would be surprised if it did. Let's put it that way. If it did have binding power, I'd be very, very surprised. You got to have all 27 nation states to freaking agree to that. So it'll probably be non-binding for now. But who knows? What do you think in terms of, like, are you familiar with the EU's meeting tonight and what you think might come out of the EU and what underlying might actually say afterwards?
I'm a pessimist right now because the only thing the EU will be capable of is containment and preventing conflict spillover. So I don't think they will have the courage and dignity to actually offer material support to Ukraine. I don't think they will do it.
To be fair, I share your pessimism, and I'd go one step further and say, do you know what? With the financial crisis that still the European Union are experiencing to this day, I don't really think that they've got much assets to be able to provide any like material or much financial support to Ukraine in the first place. I think it'll just be an empty symbolic gesture that the EU will provide rather than anything that will be meaningful. Would you agree, disagree? Maybe
there's a financial crisis in Europe, also an immigrant and refugee crisis that has been going on for a long time.
Yes.
There's also a crisis of EU staying together.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the crisis of EU staying together is a much more urgent crisis for the European Union. As a result, it is possible, if someone is intelligent enough, to use this situation as a way to show that the EU is capable of meaningful action together. So if the EU acts in Ukraine with certainty, regardless of economic consequences, the EU will stay together. Now, if the EU will keep to use American phrasing, pussyfooting around the issue, EU with Brexit, with the Greece stuff, with the Germany stuff, EU would miss its chance to stay together. same as NATO. The reason why these organizations are set up is for unified decisive action. That's the entire point. Diplomacy, so people can discuss stuff, and unified decisive action. Unified decisive action is half of the purpose. So if you're not fulfilling half of your purpose and your diplomacy is kind of garbage to begin with, you have no business as an organization because you're not fulfilling your raison d'etre.
Yeah. I mean, just full disclosure, I'm a full-on Brexiteer believer, and like thinking of the European Union as a united force that is all about taking united decisive actions is quite alien to me. I fear that that's not going to happen. It's the purpose, but
so because there's already a financial crisis, this will not exacerbate it too much. If the EU would have been in a financial, zenith, in a boom rather than a bust, people would be concerned about the future investments. But right now, it's actually not that bad from an economic standpoint.
In the sense of like they've got nothing to lose, in a way.
Well, it's not that they got nothing to lose. The additional losses as a percentage of what is going on are much less than the losses if this would have been occurring under a boom.
Okay.
It's second derivative of growth or negative growth. You take second derivative,
negative growth.
It's smaller in this situation then.
Okay.
So I had a question. I just want to let you guys get every time you keep saying EU, I keep thinking extended universe of Star Wars. That's how I'm so out of it on some of the stuff you're saying, but it was interesting. So I let that keep going. But what I was curious why, and also we did find an article. Thanks, Kim, in the headline room. Ukraine neighbors close airspace to civilian flights. So I'm assuming you read something probably similar to this that explains that. But what I wanted to ask was this, because back to when we watched the Biden press conference. There's sanctions on the Russian banks, elites, but not on Putin himself. I'm curious your thoughts on this, Ilya. Why not put it on Putin? What do you think is going on here?
So the way sanctions work, sanctions don't work by existing. Sanctions are more effective as a threat of sanctions rather than as once you enact them. So once you enact sanctions, if you enact all of the possible measures you can, then there's nothing to trade for in the future. So once I implement all the sanctions that I have a very short window until people get used to living under the condition. Now, once people are used to living under sanctions, they're no longer effective. Cuba, people still get put in prison for, political dissent. North Korea, is another sanctioned regime. Iran, same thing. Once people are used to living under sanctions, they stop being effective. So you always keep some economic penalties still on the table in order to use their threat. So that's the problem. That's why the president said the sanctions won't work. Why? As soon as you impose them, they start deteriorating, like the effectiveness declines. The effectiveness of sanctions is much higher before they're implemented than after. And considering we're dealing with a state that has a substantial authoritarian and totalitarian history, those states are much more used to operating under such conditions than imposing sanctions on, let's say, Italy. If you impose sanctions on Italy, Italy will give up and start behaving. But if you impose sanctions on Russia or Belarus, they will only get worse.
Got it. Interesting. I mean, that makes sense. You got to sort of save it. And then also, speaking of the EU, I just saw some in the chat share. They're all arriving, I guess, to Brussels. Yep. And this, we have some footage here. I think you guys are seeing it. Sorry, I have so many windows open today. This is old. This isn't live anymore. I don't know if there's going to be a live meeting or something, but They were outside for the past hour and a half as people, there we go. Some people walking in and out from each of the countries of the EU. But that's happening at the same time. We are waiting for that meeting, but we will see what happens there. Thank you for that. Emma got it. And I'm just going through all the links to make sure we're up to date on where the things stand right now. Thanks everybody in Headline Group for gathering. I'm going through some of the pieces, but yeah, it's just heartbreaking. There is, I saw a lot of responses. I don't even really want to go there, but it is, we showed Biden. Trump has responded as well. He's praised Putin's movements before Russia launched invasion. So, I mean, here's what he said from his Mar-a-Lago country club. This was yesterday, and he's spoken again recently. I mean, he's taken over a country for $2 worth of sanctions, Trump said. I'd say that's pretty smart. He's taking over a country, literally a vast, vast location, a great piece of land with a lot of people, and just walking right in. As this was right as before everything sort of invaded and happened. On Tuesday, Trump made headlines praising Putin's decision to send troops into Ukraine to support Russian-backed separatists. This is genius, he said on a radio program. So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper? We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There were more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace, all right. As he did Tuesday, Trump didn't miss a beat, assuring his audience that while Putin is smart, he would have been able to achieve this goal with Ukraine if Trump were still in power. This never would have happened, even in a million years. It would have never happened, Trump said. All I know him, Putin, very well. I know probably almost as well as I know anybody in this room, other than, I don't know who that is, Doc Ronnie Jackson. But there you go. Trump saying this wouldn't happen on his watch and praising Putin for the smart move. I mean, Elia, what do you think of those comments?
Well, first of all, Mr. Trump is always within his usual flair of self-aggrandizement. It is unclear whether this would have or would not have happened under Trump. It is very possible that it would have happened sooner, given the fact that the personality profiles of Putin and Trump seem to interact very well. And just like George Bush Jr., who looked into Putin's eyes and saw the mother's cross on Putin's neck. By the way, that cross was there only for one meeting, and Putin never wore it again. Where Putin tends to get his way with American presidents often enough, and Trump might have been lulled into Putin's charm very often. So it's possible that things would have been worse. It is also possible that Mr. Trump would have taken Putin's actions as a personal insult. And given how we know that Mr. Trump doesn't take lightly to personal insults, there would have been military action by the United States in Ukraine right now. So those are the options.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, interesting comments, to say the least. All I know is as we scroll through sort of here's some other clips as we had ready. Here's a clip from CNN I was going to play. Hold on. Is this playing? Of just how close Russian forces are to the capital. Is this gonna play? Maybe it's not. Way to go, CNN. Get a better video player. maybe just put it on YouTube, CNN, because I can't get it to play. I played it earlier. Okay, I can't. Nope, they're not gonna play. All right, I have another thing I was gonna go to here, which was just some of the imagery here. Oh, here we go. As we scroll through some of these, as I was playing earlier.
Make no mistake, this is a full-scale Russian invasion into Ukraine happening right now, and the air raid sirens going off in the Ukrainian capital as we speak. Shannon?
All right, Trey Yangst doing an...
I mean, yeah, it's getting intense over there as we see lots of... this was in Uman. People just fleeing the streets, just leaving their crashed cars. Just a lot of chaos as everyone's just trying to get out. Where do they go at this point? Where can they go?
Into neighbouring countries of Europe, as Ilya said. Going to be
Germany,
mass.
Germany and Lithuania and Poland said they will accept some refugees.
Yep.
So scary. At least 2 soldiers belonging to the Russian invasion have been captured by Ukrainian soldiers. It's photos like this could make Russians back home question the war. I mean, yeah, I mean, look at this stuff. It's crazy. So young. Ugh, just all so scary. What do they even know what they're fighting for? Oh, it's just heavy shit, man. But yeah, it's just scary that this could be happening for a long time.
I sent you a video on Instagram from this morning, too, a while ago.
Oh, man, look at that shit. That was over near Kiev. Is it Kiev or Kiev? They've been saying it all interesting only over the news.
Depends on where you're from.
Yep.
I've always pronounced it as Kiev. But it's...
Kiev is sort of what I've always heard through the news. I thought it was Kiev.
Дружеская Россия сделала. Вот нанесен удар. Сзади меня воронка. Еще дымится, видите? Вот. Вот. Сторонникам Путина, России. Посмотрите. Вот.
To all the supporters of Putin, take a look.
Вон. Видите? Слышно разрывы еще.
You hear explosions.
Вот я на военном аэродроме.
I couldn't hear the last thing he mumbled.
But yeah, that was the missile strike damage in Ukrainian airport in southern Ukraine. It's just, yeah, it's.
Filming in the morning today.
Terrifying shit.
I can't hear what
yeah, just lots of the stuff. I mean, so do you think that can he just keep doing this for weeks on end and start just creating more damage through air and take this control? What do you expect?
Why not?
We'll see. Do you think this will get worse? This footage?
Yeah.
Well, Syria was a test.
Hi there.
How long did that last?
I don't even know anymore.
He's got the capability to let this drag on. But I mean, my kind of like instinct here is that it's not. If it's continuing the way that it is, and all it's gonna be is just sanctions, Putin's gonna have the whole of Ukraine in no time. It's going to be fast. It's going to be very, very quick. It's not going to be as lengthy as Syria or anything like that. This is going to be over within a matter of weeks.
You underestimate the power of guerrilla warfare.
You think? Fair enough.
Like that can procrastinate stuff. Though what Ukraine will have to do right now is to stall the war as long as possible to find someone within NATO or the EU who would do something, or the UN. Find some guarantee of an independent Ukraine, even if half of it will be taken away right now. That's what it's going to be. You can draw a vertical line across the middle of Ukraine down, and everything to the east of it is likely to be captured by Russia. That seems to be the likely case. And that seems to be the best plausible scenario right now.
Ugh.
You're right. I didn't take into account the guerrilla warfare. Yeah, I now revise my statement. Yeah, fair play.
What's your background?
My background, I have a degree in international relations and security studies. I majored in the ethics and philosophy of international terrorism, 3 years conflict resolution, Bradford University.
We have a similar background.
Okay.
We have a similar background, IPCR, EPGA, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Affairs, IPCR, School of International Service, and philosophy degree. So we have a similar background here.
Yes.
You might be more versed with European treaties and banking systems because you have the London School of Economics close by, and they spread their tentacles everywhere.
Correct. Non-overall exaggeration, yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, regardless, the financial sanctions are just not going to work. He's got enough internal reserves to let this drag on and drag on and drag on and be
Here's what I
protected.
foresee as a consequence of financial sanctions.
Yeah.
Financial sanctions will put pressure on the Russian society. That way, people who consider themselves members of the civil society will start joining protests.
Yeah.
Putin will start arresting people, so he will basically eliminate his potential opposition and people who would vote for their position.
Yes.
Slowly using this. And because you go to protest, and you can't vote from prison.
Nope.
There are elections coming up soon, it's a great way to eliminate civil society. So,
But he already does that anyway. He's been doing that for years.
Yeah, but
not that it started. He'll just continue doing it.
Yes, he will do it because people are not substantially dissatisfied. The more people are dissatisfied, the more people you arrest until you get rid of everybody who could possibly not like you.
Yep.
Yep, people fleeing. Yeah, that's what's in the video right now.
Yep. We've been seeing that all over news as well today. Just queues getting out.
Oh God! Imagine if you like get off in the wrong exit and you got to get stuck back in that. Jesus, I would be so mad. That happens to me all the time. But that's awful. Look at that. Oh Jesus. I'm surprised they're just waiting. I mean, there's not. I guess where do you go? But I'm just. It's gonna get worse. More chaos. More. You
at least leave the center of the city. You at least do that. Right. So like I used to live in DC. Right now I moved a bit north to Frederick, and if there's a military strike everywhere, like the entire DC is not a safe place to live. A bunch of military bases around it, the Pentagon, south of DC, across the river. Then you have the Capitol building, the White House. Like you flee DC. If there's a chance of a war, that's not where you go. You go exactly into the farmland where there's nothing. Right, but the problem is I don't think it's a plausible solution for Ukrainians right now. My understanding is the international community has to, once in its existence, live up to the very things for why they were created.
Yeah.
Like once. They failed in Rwanda. The UN failed in Rwanda. The UN failed in Bosnia.
Oh, big
time. The UN failed in Iraq. The UN failed in Afghanistan. The UN failed in Ireland.
With the Troubles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They failed everywhere. Like once. Yeah. Like how many homework assignments do you have to fail to learn a lesson?
Yeah.
Like you remember Rwanda, right? What happened? You remember Bosnia. So UN tends to fail the very things it was created to do. But so we'll see. We'll see about NATO. We'll see about the European Union. All of those have a mission to prevent the exact thing that's happening now. That's their entire purpose. They have other missions too. The EU is an economic zone primarily, but it's also a security apparatus. Because you cannot have open borders without sharing security and intelligence information, without collaborating.
And let's be clear here, like Crimea, the annexation of that happened in 2014. Like the whole point of trying to prevent this in the first place, it's not like this is just all of a sudden out of the blue.
No,
Putin just decided one day, do you know what? I'm going to invade Ukraine. This has been years in the making, so they should have done something more.
I think he joined a little bit later, right?
Yeah.
in the stream. So I started with a brief history of how things came to be. Do you remember the 1994 Budapest Protocols?
I remember some of the main principles from my degree.
Budapest Protocols was signed by Ukraine, Russia, Uzbekistan, and some other republic. At the time, Ukraine had the third largest nuclear stockpile in the world. And in return for guarantee of its territorial integrity, which included Crimea, Russia would take the nuclear launch pads and nuclear materials. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that bit. They gave it up for that. Yes.
Okay. So right now, and recently, so I will recap. In 2008, right around the Olympics, Russia invades Georgia. In that case, it's possible Russia had an excuse. It was possible, right? Like, it's not an agreed upon thing. 2014, right after the Olympics, Russia places de-identified soldiers and contractors to take over Crimea, right after the Olympics. On the 23rd of February, which is the day of the Red Army in the Russian republics. And right after the Olympics this year, on the 23rd of February, Russia does what? Putin is big into theater. Like it's not bullshit. There's an actual pattern. He picks these dates with a purpose. Because a war with Ukraine is simultaneously supposed to be a test for his patriotism manufacturing machine. You manufacture patriotism. And the way you manufacture patriotism, you have to have a war immediately after the Olympics. It has to be a war that you say it's protecting your interests. And it has to nicely fall onto the day of the Russian army, which is 23rd of February. In fact, I mean, it's right there. You look up the numbers, like 2008, 2014. Like, and there are other instances where it was just like that, but they're less well known. So, in fact, yesterday I was actually recording a podcast with Gothics, and I bombed that podcast because I couldn't answer coherently, since my phone started blowing up 30 minutes or 20 minutes, something like that, before the podcast started. With suspicious, like something's going to happen, this is weird, so on and so forth. And I opened up the podcast saying, like, well, one of the things noteworthy that today is the date of the Red Army, and you might find out later why during this podcast. And I chose not to open my mouth further about this because don't want to be, alarming people. And during the podcast, when I was recording Vanessa, like my phone saying like there's going to be a war with Ukraine, going to be like a real war, people actually know. So I was like completely distracted and bombed the podcast and couldn't respond very like coherently. I think I have an excuse on that one because
I think you do.
Like we're talking about culture and art and political correctness and wokeism, and then there's this important thing. So for Americans who are not actually used to oppression very well, I will recommend you to look into the history of the Soviet Union that sets up the history of this event, like regaining the empire. One thing for people who are fans of socialism, in socialist Soviet Union, you did not get to pick the job. The job, you're assigned a job by the state. And that's the way you get socialism and equality, by having the state distribute jobs, not people picking jobs with their Excel. So the entire 70 years of Soviet Union is basically built on a version of slave labor that ranges from full-on concentration camps like the Gulag to a very mild, soft version of slave labor where you're kind of kind of talented, kind of not. You're assigned a job that you kind of like, kind of don't. But you are still assigned a job. You did not pick it very well. And the government gives you an apartment. Even if you have enough money to buy a better apartment, you had no right to buy your own apartment. So that's the history of the situation. And given that that's how society was run on the territory of modern-day Russia for 70-plus years, do you think sanctions will work?
No.
No. Never did think that in the
me want to
first
get some
place.
more Texas vodka. I was going to say, you may have bombed the Gothics thing. I'm sure you didn't, but apparently I see trending right now. Hold off the nukes. The lady from the 90210 reboot says she wants to hug me. This is trending all over the place, and let's watch this together, because Anna Lynn McCord has decided to put together a video to Mr. Putin. I have not yet watched this, so it sounds like this could be entertaining. Shall we watch this quickly? Let's see if this could solve the problem.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother. If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light. Never would the stories plight the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm. So much laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain that the little boy you must have seen and believed, and the formulation of thought quickly taught that you lived in a cruel, unjust world. Is this why you now decide no one will get the best of you? Is this why you do not hide nor away shy from taking back the world? Was it because so early in life all that strife racked your little body with fear? If I was your mother, if the world was cold, I'd have died to make you warm. I'd have died to protect you from the unjust, the violence, the terror, the uncertainty. I would have died to give you life. Oh, dear Mr. President Putin, if only I'd been your mother. Perhaps the torture of unwrit youth would not within your heart imbue ascription to such fealty against that world that you thought was so cruel. Perhaps you would hold dear human life, and on this night, instead of Mother Russia, you would call me, and I would set your mind quite free with the love that only a mother can give, and only a mother can take away. When holds she doesn't the harm at bay and leaves her boy for the promise of a man. Whatever your story, Mr. President Putin, I can't imagine how it feels in your heart, but I know if I was your mother, that would be a start towards the awareness of what a powerful being of light you could be if your mind was only free from the violence you've seen when you were just 2 or 3. I cannot believe I was born too late, in a different place, when I would have loved you so, watched you play wherever you go.
It's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
Thank God. Thank God it doesn't keep going.
That might fly in Hollywood, and Andy knows very well that kind of stuff
Jesus
flies in
Christ.
Hollywood. And it's very nice of her to find a way of feeling important.
Well said. Oh my God! Just the self-righteousness of like, what are you? It's literally been what she did this 4 hours ago. Literally, this is all breaking, and her response is, "I have to do some poetry. I have to talk to Mr. Putin myself through some poetry on social media."
So that is my concern with American civil society, what in international affairs people call civil society, is that somehow it looks like that, right? It looks like, oh, Putin attacks Ukraine and is violating a series of international laws and treaties. It's about me. I want to be his mother. Because if I was his mother, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Oh, she's done this before. If you were president, what would you? Oh God, she does like this spoken word poetry politically. Oh my God, I'm not giving her any more time, but that is
no.
That's worse than Gal Gadot doing Imagine. I'll be honest. That's
there might be a cultural difference between me and you Westerners, so to speak. Does it come off as that?
Yeah, let's put it this way, right? What you're saying, personally, for me, I'm completely 100% agreeing with you. I was watching that and listening to that, and that was like pine cones in my ears. It was like
I needed the laugh,
what
so thank you, Annalyn.
the hell planet is she living on? This is ridiculous, and it's to me, this thing is watering down the actual seriousness and severity of the situation at the moment that she clearly does not understand or grasp. And
I mean, she can do like so. This is American civil society, so to speak. People, prominent people with a civil position about moral issues, which is the definition of a civil society, right?
Yes.
Roughly. That's what she does. She could do what Glenn Beck did and use his private jet to evacuate people. That's what Glenn Beck did in Afghanistan.
Yep.
Right? Like Glenn Beck is a ridiculous fellow by any standard, but that's the difference, right? And it seems to me that the certain segment of the American civil society likes to make moral issues about them and their identity. And it is not an unfair reading. The opening of that poetry was about her identity. If she was Putin's mother, the world would be better. That's very interesting. Now, you cannot put
Hold on. We're in the middle of almost World War, and Annalyn McCord has decided to make a statement directly to Miss Putin. And what's so funny is this might 5 million people have watched this. I guess everyone needed to laugh.
It's nuts.
I'm so sorry that I was not your mother.
Consider the following. Right? I have a Russian mother. I know what a Russian mother is.
Yep.
And one of the things I know is that you cannot put love in your pocket. First of all love is conditional. Absolutely all. Even a mother's love. It's conditioned on the child being her child. It's very conditional.
Yeah.
There's no unconditional love. And Putin doesn't trade in this currency. Only thing he understands is power and possibly embarrassment. And the only way Putin understands embarrassment is from a perceived loss of power. Right? This stuff only feeds into Putin's propaganda because he will reshare it on propaganda social media and say, the West is weak. This is the best thing they can come up with. And to a certain extent, he'll be right.
Yep.
Because now some actress with blonde hair wants to be his mother because of what he did.
Well, and is this actually his mother, or is this someone just guessing? I wonder. I'm curious. It might be. Who knows?
I don't know about that.
But I wonder if he had a nice mom, and did she even do their homework, and does that have anything to do with what?
I mean, just to be clear, in terms of Putin's past, he was part of the KGB. His past is very sketchy in the first place, and we don't know everything about it. So I'd be very sketchy in terms of any pictures that are being shared at the moment in regards to like his past and his childhood and all that lot.
Pictures of him or his family are the ones that have been allowed by him.
Exactly. And I'll think why on that one. But the one thing that I've been thinking about for a while, I've tried to segue this question in, but I'm just going to ask it. One of the things that he's kind of had this kind of narrative on is the Ukrainian regime having this kind of quasi-Nazi ideology and is basically committing genocide against the ethnic Russians in Ukraine. Now, I'm thinking, obviously, that's not the freaking case, quite clearly, and that he's spinning a narrative there. But where's he getting that from? I don't understand that bit, to be fair.
So, it is not the case, but it is easy for him to present it to the Russian people to be the case. And here is why.
Yeah.
One, since the 1990s, Ukraine has been fighting for its own identity. That means it has started passing laws that a certain percentage of material taught in schools would be taught in Ukrainian. And considering that over half of Ukraine is Russian-speaking, to some people it felt like a form of discrimination, that their children cannot go to Russian-speaking schools. And remember, persecuting people based on linguistic traits under the United States Declaration of Human Rights is a form of genocide. It triggers genocide, right? I'm not saying it is. I'm saying like that's how the layout is.
Okay.
Enough people, Russian-speaking people in Ukraine have complained about bad treatment in certain regions. Second, after the Maidan Square in 2014, Ukraine declared that it's going to be independent of Russians meddling. That was, and there were right-wing elements to it as well. And what Russia did, they escalated the conversation about those right-wing elements taking over parts of the Ukrainian government, and that they will start persecuting Russian speakers in Ukraine. As a result, a fertile soil in the eastern Ukrainian, Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea, was created to spread sufficient amount of fear and confusion about their future. Remember, the rumors about possible discrimination have been going on for a while. And now you have a change of regime. You have possible right-wing elements in the government. Every government has right-wing elements.
Yeah, it's natural.
It's the whole point. You have right-wing and left-wing, and somehow they have to work together, and that's how you have a long regime, you know. And at the same time, when people started making noise about that in Crimea, we have to understand that Crimea the Russian fleet had a deal with Ukraine that it can station its ships in the region. That means, what is a ship? A whole bunch of people. They bring their family to Crimea. Over a while, that region became virtually mini Russia. Why? Because a lot of people decided to stay in Crimea. It's primarily Russian speaking. A lot of people identify themselves more with Russia culturally, nationally, so on and so forth. So it was easy to start this whole mess at the time. And as soon as Crimea started being taken off, there is a originally unofficial Ukrainian battalion. I forgot what it's called. The unofficial Ukrainian battalion that virtually recruits only neo-Nazis, and then it was further absorbed by the Ukrainian military, and that was the mistake Ukraine did in its propaganda war, and it happened early enough. I'll look it up real quick. So please add your comments while I'm looking this up, because I don't want to mistake names.
No, of course not. It's important to get it all right. So guys, I'm just gonna spin through some of the comments. So let's have a look and see. Are you back now, Andy?
Sorry, I was getting water and I had to get some air in here. I was sweating like crazy. But I was listening. Cade the 4, and then my mic was off. You couldn't hear me. Cade the 4 piece. Thank you so much for the super chat. I live on the Danish island Bornholm, close to Kaliningrad. What is the possibility that the Baltic Sea area will be involved in this? I will ask him again once he finds his numbers, or his information there, rather. Good question. Emma Jane, thank you so much for your super chat sticker as well. If you guys want to support the stream, you can do so by using the Stream Elements link. And if you really want to support our guests, go support Steph the Alter Nerd. But also make sure you go show some support to our guest while he's working there. I'm going to plug him. You can go over That Works. That's his YouTube channel. Incredible work that he does here with Matt Stagmer and his team over there. With Ilya and Matt, do some amazing. They are blacksmiths, guys. As if you didn't think Ilya was cool enough. Wait till you go watch him forge some amazing stuff here. It's incredible the work that he does.
Meet your next pillow.
Well, that's not to click over your ad, but here, look, literally.
It has a grain structure that goes.
We'll go and look at this stuff. This dude's a badass. Literally in the forge, forging metal. Doesn't get any damn cooler than that. So I want you guys to go support That Works, which, by the way, congrats to you guys. You're going to get to 1 million soon. How excited are you? That's incredible. I'm so happy for you both.
Thank you. And this time around, we did it without a big media company.
Exactly, which was my. I apologize in
So,
advance. I apologize in advance. I was swindled by them too. But and also you can follow him on Instagram at Slavic Smith. There it is. To follow him in his adventures. But go ahead. You were back.
So so here's one of the key pieces of evidence Putin has used in his propaganda to say that Ukraine is full of National Socialists and was conducting genocide of Russian speakers in Ukraine. Put Azov Battalion, AZOV space, and then battalion.
Yep.
In Google and pull up pictures.
Say it one more time.
Azov Battalion.
Do you have it?
So AZOV, A for Alpha, Z for Zulu, O for Oscar, V for Victor, Battalion.
I can't find the link.
Yeah, pictures.
Find me a link.
I'll send you it now. Just to look at pictures.
The battalion. There it
just
is.
go on
Okay.
to images. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Okay.
You see what I'm talking about already, just from the insignia.
Yeah, it looks like that swastika.
They were almost exclusively composed at first of nationalists, Ukrainian nationalists, who decided to try to fight Russian aggression. I mean, nationalists don't always get things wrong. And eventually they became officially absorbed into the Ukrainian military, and they still maintain almost exclusively a neo-nationalist ideology, which was the giant mistake on the part of the Ukrainian military to accept those people, because now they are the main piece of evidence that Putin is using to say, if he needs to, that there is a genocide of ethnic Russians in Ukraine. That is the reason. That's where it's coming from.
I mean, is there? But it sounds like it's not like there's very little credibility that maybe because they weren't a good group, but clearly he's overstating that.
Here's an example that would be easier for you to understand. Imagine if United States is engaged in a war with, let's say, who's cool? Uganda, right? Have you imagined that?
Okay.
And imagine United States has a battalion who are all KKK members and deploys it there.
It's not good.
Yeah. Why does Uganda now have a claim in international court that United States might be starting a genocide? At least from the standpoint of optics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly the parallel, pretty much.
Yeah. That's where I was getting it from. Okay.
Yeah. So it's easier to understand now. And the problem is, United States is right now cleansing its military from white nationalist sympathizers. Ukraine, because it had to, accepted at first basically vigilantes as an official part of the U.S. military, Ukrainian military, because it needed people to fight aggression. And that's one of the most fatal mistakes it did. Because that's the key piece of evidence.
That's a very fatal mistake. That's a big bummer.
Even though that wasn't Ukraine's intention, it's given Putin another ace card to turn around and say, look at what Ukraine's doing. It's committing genocide because it's including the Azov battalion now. And
I mean, there's only like 300 people there or something. It's not very many. But the point is, this is a brilliant, this is a perfect piece of propaganda.
Yeah. It's symbolic that they can use.
I could have come on. Here's how good of a piece of propaganda this is. I could have come on to this live stream, shown you images of that, shown you the Wikipedia entry for it, which is Western controlled, so there's no Russian influence on that, and said, look, this is the battalion that is currently active and has been active from the beginning, from 2014, in the region. And Putin is defending Russian speakers from those. I could have said that. And you, for a while, would not have had any argument against me. From the standpoint of international law, which is Putin's claim.
Yeah.
Said, I had to declare those regions because these people are fighting my people, so I gave them sanctuary and declared them parts of Russia, and now I'm defending them with my military because things are getting out of hand, which is exactly Putin's argument.
Diabolical.
And that was the mistake. And if I would have presented that position to you, coming on and said, you guys are all wrong, here's the evidence, and you look, and it looks exactly like I would have described you, you would have had nothing to say against that. Zero. Because I showed you an actual formal part of the Ukrainian military that from historical circumstances of despair is entirely composed of neo-Nazis. Oh, and by the way, they're being accused, and there's substantial evidence of brutal torture, including rape of captives.
The Azov battalion are?
Yeah, correct.
Being accused of that. Is there actually any evidence of that, or is it being spun?
Yes.
There's actually evidence.
Evidence
Okay.
comes from the UN and
well, there you go then. Yeah, okay.
Borders. So, like, no, there's substantial evidence that they engage in that. So, not only is that they're not like plush Nazis, they're actual, like real bad dudes, and that's the one key thing that is very persuasive to Russians who want to listen to Putin. It's very persuasive to them. Most Russians oppose, as far as I understand, oppose war with Ukraine because it would be like war between the United States and Canada. Right? What did Canada ever do to you? But the people who are on the side of the Kremlin look to this and say there's no way there's no genocide. So the stated purposes that Putin said for his invasion are defending Russian speakers, demilitarizing Ukraine, and denazifying it. Look, type in denazifying Ukraine, and that's in Putin's statement. So this is one of the cited reasons.
Yeah, no, it's from 9 minutes ago. Where he's ahead of it, guys. This was.
No, that was early morning. It's just news agency got it now, but the actual thing is from like during the invasion.
Yeah, because that's why I asked earlier on, because he said it early on that basically that the whole Ukrainian regime's got this Nazi ideology, is committing a genocide against the ethnic Russians in Ukraine, and I'm like.
And it said
I don't have enough information. Where the hell has he got that from? I don't think that's the case, but he's obviously spinning it. But how? Like,
and now you see how.
Yeah, now I see how.
How easy it is to do that.
So easy.
So this battalion, you're saying though, is not. I mean, so have they pushed this again? I'm just not understanding the reality of this battalion now in 2022 is what.
They obviously are fighting. Yep. And here's the problem. One of the things about nationalists, and the more radical a nationalist, the more true it is, they are patriots to the core. So they are fighting Russian troops right now. So there will be images of Russian troops defeating neo-Nazis and saying, see, we told you that. You will find some of those dudes in that battalion have swastika tattoos on.
Right, and he'll obviously
so you will have Russian propaganda saying, "Look, we captured this guy. Look at his tattoos," and they will be right. They did capture a guy.
But Putin doesn't really care about that. This is all obviously he's using this to get what he wants.
Yes, but whenever you're trying to get what you want, you have to cover your ass. Even if everybody knows it's just a veneer, you still have to cover your ass, and that's important.
That's what he's doing.
But now it's clear. So that's why, like Andy, I said, look, I can talk about this stuff for you because I have some insight onto that a standard expert who is too involved in foreign policy itself would miss. And there are cultural things that are going on and have been manufactured for a while, since 1990s.
Yeah.
So, but this battalion, has the Ukraine government sort of condemn them and push them out, or what's going?
No.
They accepted him.
Yeah. Out of necessity. You needed experienced combatants who know the region to fight for you. You have a small military. You take everything you get.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So that'll complicate things especially politically.
Yeah. I mean, United States and the West can just give up on its campaign of making everything they like sterile and say, the world is messy and there are dudes on our side that we don't like, and just accept it.
Taiwan reports 9 Chinese aircrafts in defense zone. Oh, here we go.
There you go.
Taiwan's defense ministry said 9 Chinese aircrafts have entered its air defense vacation zone just hours after Russia had launched its invasion. There it is.
You see, a couple of weeks back, there were about 2 or 3 instances where Russian aircraft had actually entered the UK airspace without any warning, without any permission, this, that, and the other. And now looking back on it, I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. Was Putin testing the waters, thinking, if we didn't retaliate strong enough to that kind of incursion, that it gave him more of a confidence to think, I can invade Ukraine because, I invaded these various airspaces, and they pretty much didn't have all. So the people around Europe,
People invade other people's airspaces all the time. Part of it is mistakes. Part of it is training, provocation, and sometimes it's just intelligence services and military services working with each other badly. Right? Sometimes it's provocation, whatever. That happens on a casual basis. United States violates Iran's and Pakistan's airspace all the time. That's a common occurrence. Let's not make anything special out of that. One thing we have to point out about this stuff is that Putin and China are actually counting on a weak response from the West for one very basic reason. The West has those obnoxious things called elections.
Right.
And it is very hard for Americans to stand with the party that brings coffins back home. It's very hard. So, and right now, with the current administration, the popularity of the administration is in question. I'm going to phrase it like that. It will be very difficult to sell to the American people that there will be Americans defending democracy. Americans can't defend democracy in Canada. Why would they defend democracy in Ukraine?
But hang on a minute, just to counter that, I see where you're coming from there. However, America and Russia have had quite a complicated antagonistic history. Correct. That in this respect, I kind of think that, without going into all the nitty-gritty of it, if Biden turned around and said, right, we're going to fight Russia, we're going to defend Ukraine, we're going to send our forces, this, that, and the other, I think if anything, that could actually bolster his already historic low approval ratings. And I think the majority of Americans might actually be behind him, or enough would be behind him because of that history.
It won't bolster shit. And the reason for that is the guest we had on earlier has an organization that takes Americans out of Ukraine, not into Ukraine.
But isn't that organization taking out just, and I don't mean it as derogatory, but normies and not actual military?
Well, there used to be military troops in Ukraine, a very small amount of them in Kiev, up until a couple of days ago. As I said, it is more popular as a public sentiment to get Americans out of Ukraine than into Ukraine. On all sides of the political aisle. The conservatives want no American lives be spent on this, and the liberals don't want Americans to go into Ukraine. That's it. It is, from an abstract point of view, the popular idea is Americans out of there, not in there. In fact, what possibly could have saved Ukraine right now if Americans refused to take their people out, thereby setting up a costly signal that now there are Americans there, and if you hurt a single American, we're at war. That has worked with East and West Germany. Yep. Americans still keep a small contingent of people in Germany, well, West Germany. Do you think 3,000 troops are going to do anything against an actual invasion? No. No. One airstrike, done. Two, maybe. Right? But the whole reason is that if there is an airstrike, that means American troops are being attacked, and therefore that triggers a declaration of war. That's how. So
there is a deterrent, a human shield deterrent.
It is a deterrent.
Yeah.
United States chose to not have a deterrent. And yes, it sucks to use your own people as shields against a war, but war is, by its very definition, a nasty and dirty business. And now that there are barely any Americans in Ukraine, United States has no argument to defend Ukraine militarily. And Putin knew that, and he knew that from the very fact of how badly American troops and citizens were withdrawn from Afghanistan, and how quickly it was happening, how quickly Afghanistan was falling. That there's an American sentiment to get the troops out and not help the actual people who Americans cultivated. Consider the situation of Afghanistan. For the past 10 years, you have American-educated, American-sponsored Afghani feminist activists who were prodded by Americans, go in the media, expose your face, talk about your issues. There were LGBT activists, lesbian ones in Kabul, right? They would go on social media and say, I'm an activist, so on and so forth. Those people were sponsored, educated by the West. It's not the... And then when the shit hits the fan, America abandons the very people that it used to show, oh, look how much we're doing here. We even have LGBT activists in Afghanistan. They were set up. Those activists were set up. And I wish the United States would not have engaged in promoting activism in Afghanistan if it knew that as soon as the United States leaves, all those people are dead.
Yeah.
In the worst way possible.
Yes.
Now, the same thing happens as a result of American foreign policy. Putin looked at it that the assets were not withdrawn and that Americans would prefer to leave a troubled zone so fast that they would even leave military assets and civilians that they have cultivated to be the civil society in the region. Putin saw how quickly the United States abandoned its Afghani translators, who basically betrayed their country.
Yeah.
For hope of a peaceful Afghanistan. They got nothing in return. How quickly Americans abandoned feminist activists. Under the Taliban, those tend to not do very well. Last time I checked. Right?
Yeah.
How quickly United States abandoned LGBT activists. How quickly they abandoned businesses. They used to cater to American military bases, because those people are traitors too now. Right? Putin looked at that and said, okay, so the general mentality is out, not in. And that's what's going on. And that's why the Biden administration is unlikely to actually use anything useful in the situation, which is a show of actual force, because there's elections. The general thing that Americans like is out, not in. more social media, more bad TV shows on HBO, more diverse stuff on Amazon. We don't like to solve actual problems.
Yeah.
Americans don't like the American society, civil society, not the people who served.
It's true.
People who served understand the state, but most Americans don't serve. So what happens is the general ethos of the situation is we like to focus on problems that can be talked about on Twitter rather than problems that require me to put on a pair of work boots or military boots and be in danger. And that's a concern. That if that's the general ethos, that makes any administration incapable of meaningful, fast action, because it would mean losing an election.
The thing is, though, one thing that I've got in my head, because what you're saying, of course, it makes sense, but, you know, you've got the military complex in America that forms big, major special interests that heavily influence Congress, the president, you know, everyone that's in power. This whole big, massive war machine in America, they'll be salivating at the prospect of getting into the Ukraine conflict, because then that means more money for them. And there has been instances before where, you know, America's gone to war for that against the distinct wishes of the people.
America does not go to war against countries with nuclear weapons. Why do you think Iraq was invaded in, was it 2003, and not North Korea? North Korea has a much worse human rights record than Iraq. North Korea actually has chemical weapons, unlike Iraq, seemingly.
Iraq had chemical weapons. It used mustard gas.
That's a chemical weapon.
Yeah, but you said that
North Korea has everything: human rights violations, destabilizing activity in the region, has chemical weapons. But the only difference between Iraq and North Korea, Iraq is like a Disneyland compared to North Korea is that North Korea has nuclear weapons, and that's why they're not being invaded.
Okay.
Because North Korea is within strike of Tokyo and Seoul.
Yeah, and South Korea, which is a big major U.S. ally.
The U.S. military wants to keep its job, and the way you keep your job is by not attacking nuclear weapon armed countries. Because the consequence of a mistake is stonage, potentially. Yeah. Because you forgot that there's also a standing conflict between Pakistan and India. Both nuclear countries. They don't like each other very much, and they still shoot each other on the border often enough. Oh, China and India too have a continuous conflict. China has nuclear weapons. So in that situation, I don't think it is even close to being in the cost-benefit calculation to start a war in the region on the behalf of the Pentagon. If I understand how intelligence and military services do their cost-benefit analysis, but there's also a concept called mission creep, and I can't really understand the shape of the current mission creep in the region. And so, like, Andy, where are you?
I'm here.
Okay. Do you have anything to add with your pop culture knowledge? I know what's going on right now looks like what Call of Duty, Stalker, and other video games have been promising for years.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the question. I mean, like most people in the chat, I've seen people asking. They're like, "Well, how did this start? I don't understand." And and I was even responding a bit of like, "It's complicated." But can you, as we wrap up, just to sort of give summary for those who are new and still like Ilya, what's the layman's idiot's guide? Sort of your speculation of why do you think this is happening? Why is Russia invading Ukraine?
Russia is invading Ukraine to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, because if Ukraine were to join NATO, it could use the power of NATO to secure Crimea. and Russia is not prepared to for an all-out war with the entirety of NATO. So it was, for Putin, it was a necessity from the standpoint of the way he sees foreign policy. It's an evil necessity, but we can't. I'm here not as a moral agent. I'm here as someone who knows something about the situation.
There you go. And yeah, I mean, it's just all sad. The more I hear it all, and you guys have explained so much to me, I just get worried about what else is going to happen, who is going to take advantage of this, how long is this going to go, how many people are we going to lose? It's all just seems so just unnecessary. And then you go and immediately think, well, how do we just take out Putin then? Come on, just take him out. And we've already discussed that as well. As not as easy to do when he has access to a nuclear button and can just decide, oh, boom, you're all dead. So we're in a very complicated situation right now.
Correct. And we hopefully international organizations, including the UN, NATO, and EU, will act fast to do something. And I suspect that the best possible scenario for Ukraine right now, that it will be cut in half. That's the best scenario that seems realistic. The worst is Ukraine will be demanded to surrender its entire military potential and its entire government to become a satellite state of the Kremlin.
I would say then, in terms of those two potentials, the one that is probably more realistic, I think, is that he's going to get the whole of Ukraine. So it then becomes a satellite state. Because any actual true action to stop that, no one's going to do. It's just going to be sanctions, which it's been explained. They don't work. It don't work.
Sanctions don't work very well, and they work especially badly against socialist or dictatorial regimes.
Yeah.
They're notoriously bad at that.
So he's not going to stop at half. He's going to get the full lot because there's nothing that's going to truly stop him from getting the whole of Ukraine. In terms of everything that we've discussed, that's kind of where I'm at now with it.
It is possible that one single American tank on the territory of Ukraine is capable of stopping the entire war, but the United States would not do that.
No. No one's got the balls.
Not a full-fledged American army, just one tank is a costly signal. But United States voters are not the same as they used to be.
Mm.
You know, I can't imagine in 1950s American voters being so afraid of spreading or defending democracy. American voters care about the representation in on the Oscars, not about solving.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a lot to digest. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we had this conversation, and I'm glad you came in here, Ilya, to help us with it as we wrap this up, just because I feel like we've come full around.
I know. I'm looking at the time.
No, I don't want to keep you. You've been here a while, and I appreciate it. So we pushed almost 3 hours on this stream, so thank you for holding out that long and educating us with your knowledge. And Steph, you as well, stepping up with both you, bringing so much knowledge to the stream, and I'm grateful because I couldn't have done this. This is not, like, I can talk all day about the pop culture shit, all day long, but this, when we get more worldly like this, I need some smarter people in the room, and I'm grateful for all your insight. And thanks again, James.
Because I know nothing about pop culture.
Yeah, exactly. I'll help you when you need that. I got you. When we go to war, I need you guys, sadly. We did have Jade Harris. What's up, Jade? This is Kanye's way of distracting us. Stay woke. Ha! Yes, I joke. We needed a laugh. It's a sad topic. No, we do need a laugh, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kanye using this as some way to promote his STEM player. Wouldn't put it past him at this point. When we start blurring the pop, I mean, we sort of just did with Anna Lynn McCord. My God, that woman and her poem was really the laugh we needed on the stream, because just this. How do you? I mean, it's Hollywood. You're right. How do you be that daft to just be like, I'm going to solve it by immediately doing a poem?
A poem how you want to be Putin's mother and how the world would be better.
Because that's not gonna piss Putin off. He's gonna love hearing this woman pretend to be his mom and declare that his mom is not right. I mean, let's just hear the beginning one more time.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
If I was your mother, you would have been so loved.
You would have been so loved. You would have been so loved. And all of this would have been stopped. That's all it takes. Thank you so much, Annalyn McCoy. Oh, you almost solved world peace with your beautiful poem and your amazing loft.
I wonder whose mother will she want to be next.
I know. I can't wait. She's going viral today. I wonder if she'll regret it. Sorry, what's that?
China. Maybe President Xi from China when he starts invading Taiwan. She might do one for that then. Or should I say President Winnie the Pooh? Oh, sorry, Ilya, what was you saying?
In Japan, they have a service, a mother for rent.
Mother for rent.
Yeah, there you go.
Have you heard, though, in China that if anyone does a meme of President Jinping, of him and Winnie the Pooh, like, they take it down? Like,
and they might arrest
comparison? Yeah, and they get arrested, yeah.
How do you spell him again?
For it. Put him with Winnie the Pooh and President of China.
Because let's just do it. We can do it here. He really, I mean, come on. He's so adorable.
Yeah, but he takes that as an insult. And severe penalties if you do it in China.
Aw, Pooh Bear. He doesn't like that. Well, there you go. That only prompts more people to do it. What can you do? Did we make sure I got through all my comments? Thank you, Jade. And then Jade Rain, zombie apocalypse, here we come. Yeah, at this point, I wouldn't be. I think the alien invasion is going to happen before the zombie apocalypse. Personally, I think it's only a matter of time before we see we have some final signs of life.
I don't think more invasions would help. I think less invasions would help.
No, of course, but given the world we've lived in the past few years, I think an alien is due. Because why not? Let's add more to it all. And then So Studios, Tracy, thank you so much. And everybody else who supported today. Amazing support. And thank you so much for handling us at this truly hot topic. Not type of stuff we typically cover here, but we are covering news. And as we've been moving around, I want to make sure we're covering all the important issues. And I wanted to make sure that you are covering Ilya. Here we go. Watch Ilya forge amazing blades over on ThatWorks with our buddy Matt and their team over in ThatWorks. If you thought you liked his viewpoints here, you're gonna love watching him do some amazing artistry over there. So go support ThatWorks. Get him to 1 million subscribers. They deserve it. So amazing. And you can also follow him on Instagram over at Slavic Smith. The mods. Hopefully you guys are sharing the links as we are there. But go show Ilya some love for being here and donating his time and expertise, as well as Steph the Alter Nerd. Steph, anything? You know where to find her. Steph the Alter Nerd. Anything else you want me to say there? Steph the Alter Nerd here on YouTube.
Before I forget, Alicia Brown from earlier on, thank you so much for the PayPal donation through my Stream Elements, $5 straight to the Vegas Fund that goes. She just says thank you for being you. Well, thank you for being you as well. In terms of my channel, yeah, if you haven't done so already, tickle that subscribe button, give me a friendly subscribe. We're on our way to 10,000 subscribers. Hopefully we can do that by the end of April. So by the time we're in Vegas, it's double celebration, 1 year anniversary of the channel, and we reached 10,000 Nerd members. Hell yeah, I'm all for that. And I released a video 3 hours ago, The Killer Cheerleader, Cheering for Murder, Robert Hayes. Please do give a click on that one. The only reason being is because YouTube wants to limit that video, so they don't want you to know what's been going on with this dude for some reason. So want to know what YouTube does not want you to know? Yeah, you'll wanna click on that, and I break it all down for you.
There it is. And I'm going back to you, Ilya, for the final word. Thank you again for being here. Anything else you want to plug or say to our audience while you're here?
Well, once again, if you're tired of politics and you want occasionally either entertainment or sometimes even culture, check out a YouTube channel that works. We do random stuff there. So we have some vlogs, we have full builds, we have original art. Check it out. Matt and I and Chris have been working very hard on the channel. And the last thing I have to say is Elizabeth Warren's tweets about the invasion of Ukraine, where she basically says sanctions is nice, NATO allies and international partners will accept refugees, and the United States will continue leveraging all our diplomatic, political, and economic tools, not military tools, to bring the end to unprovoked attack against Kremlin accounts. That is the same lady that wanted to use the police to take away wealthy people's taxes. She only knows how to hunt down American citizens, but not actual invaders. It's very interesting of her. You would think that someone who cares so much about getting rid of oppression, she would be more proactive when she sees an actual example.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's a take. There's Elizabeth Warren's tweet, and yes, we're gonna get a lot of hot takes on this one. We're gonna got a lot of people disagreeing. Probably advice to celebrities: probably just don't make any more weird poems or songs about it right now. Maybe just take some time off and let the thing happen before you go out there thinking you're gonna do something.
Instead of weird songs and poems, why don't you take your private jets and help people evacuate?
Exactly. In fact, good. Thank you, because. Go do what the organization here is doing and help save people, Project Dynamo.
I would say to American celebrities that you have behaved in such a way with these issues that you've managed to be worse as human beings than Glenn Beck. And that's a new low.
There you go. Straight from his mouth. Ilya doesn't hide it. I love it. Thank you for bringing the facts today. Really appreciate the insight. As we wrap up the show today, it's a heavy topic. It's gonna get uglier, but we got to stay here for each other. And thanks for everybody for trying to stay positive. I know there was some back and forth in the comments, but I thought you guys did a pretty good job overall with our new implemented system and our mods, trying to make sure we get you guys a chance to be able to just talk. Look, it doesn't matter if you like Biden or Trump. Who cares? Let's talk about the issues and the big things. You know what I mean? Go ahead. What were you saying, Lydia? Oh, what is this?
You see this?
What's going on?
It's a little bit. What's it say? I can't read it.
Tripling more severe sanctions on Russia rejected by Democrats.
This is going to become a much broader political issue for sure.
As I said,
as it always
elections are coming. Elections are coming, and that's it's very difficult for people who have to campaign to do specific things that require commitment.
Exactly. That's why I don't like any politicians. They're all spineless, crap, liars, typically anyway. But what can you do with this? Exactly. I just saw Lexa. These are scary times, but at least we got each other here on Popcorn Planet. If you want to stay within this community and help us, make sure you hit that subscribe button, or better yet, hit the bell for all alerts. And if you really want to help, smash the like button, or heck, go do that join button. You can hit it anytime, even if you're watching this later. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm probably just leaving this whole stream up, Steph. I don't know. I'll see if I can find a point. But either way, I appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you again to Ilya. Thank you again, James Judge, Steph the Alternate, as always. And thank you, beautiful people, for being amazing here watching. Be kind out there. Be careful out there. Stay safe out there. And be excellent to each other. Thanks for watching, everybody.